All right. There's probably a commercial playing right here or whatever. Hello, everybody. Hopefully, I was able to, you know, not get interrupted too much by the fun commercials that happen here. I'm going to start over because, I totally made a mistake. But welcome to Brewhouse Art Studio. My name is Brian Brewer. Uh, get it? Brewhouse Brewer. I, I thought it was clever. Uh, and I started this channel to kind of give back to the community. I want to, help kids or anybody out who is interested in motion editing or motion capture or animation or game development or, whatever I can do to get back to the community. I know I had help getting into the industry back in the day. I give a little bit of history on myself. I've been in the industry like 16 years now. I was calculating it last night. I'm like, where did time go? Uh, and I've been doing motion editing and motion capture for, gosh, probably the past 12 years or so. Um, I started, I put myself through school illustrating. So I'll probably do some illustrations. Maybe I'll stream that. I started sculpting recently, so I might be streaming some of my sculpting. Um, but kind of my career path and my art path. I went to school for 3D animation, became a 3D generalist. I started at DNA working on the Jimmy Neutron TV show. I was a storyboard artist on the first season. I did shows like Hypno Birthday to You and I think it changed like Mind is a Turbo Thing Two Ways or whatever. So they switch Jimmy and Cindy switch minds and whatnot. Left there and I ended up going to a place called Cat Studio. Cat Studios did a lot of commercials, did stuff for ESPN and MTV. This is back when MTV was just in that transition phase of no longer being a music channel and being reality TV channel or whatever it is they are right now. But while I was there, I met a guy named Mark Leon. Mark Leon worked at a company called Terminal Reality, and they happened to need an animator. And I was ready to make a transition from this post house of doing commercials and stuff that was it was okay, but it wasn't like what I really wanted to do. And I got into the game industry, and I started back in 2004. I want to say it was 2004. Uh, Working at Terminal Reality, I worked on Demonic, which was the most anticipated game for the 360 launch of the 360. Um, it was a Clive Barker game, and it was actually featured in Grandma's Boy. So if you ever watch Grandma's Boy, some of my stuff is in that movie, along with some of the other guys I worked with at Terminal Reality. I've got some. It's kind of, I guess, a few fun little stories about that. But the game got canceled, like a lot of games do, just for various reasons. So I started on Ghostbusters. That was the next project. But while I was working on Ghostbusters, I got an opportunity to go to 3D Realms, started on Duke Nukem Forever, and that kind of got me into the whole motion capture scene. Like prior to that, I was hand key, and I thought, like a lot of other hand key animators, motion captures the devil's rotoscope and this, that, and the other thing. But after using it for all these projects and for over a decade now, I'm just uh, I'm kind of hooked. I love doing motion capture. I love being on set. I love shooting. I love filming. Stuff I'm going to share with on this channel, and hopefully you guys enjoy it and appreciate it and learn something. And all the feedback you guys give me is awesome and great. And I can't wait to see some of it. And hopefully these streams go better than tonight. Um, So tonight I'm going to do a Motion Builder overview. I just downloaded Motion Builder 2019. It's the latest version. Uh, I've only opened it up and kind of like looked around in it. I haven't really set it up yet, and I think that's something I'm going to do today. I'm gonna get into Motion Builder. I'm going to talk about my process, what I think about why I do what I do. There's reasons. After a decade of doing this, I was taught things, and I've added my own things to it, and I've changed some of the things that I do and the way I set things up. And there's rhyme to my, or there's reason there's rhyme to my reason, and I don't know, maybe this will be cool. So without further ado, I will switch over to my desktop, and I will proceed to show you what I do whenever I set up Motion Builder 2019. But before we get started, I want to show you a tool that I use. I love this tool. It's called Direct Folders. Uh, if I middle click, you can see I've got a bunch of stuff bookmarked. This is a way to go quickly to a folder that I want to get to, like C drive. I want to directly to my C drive, or here's my website folder that I keep a bunch of my website stuff, sketchbook stuff, things that I throw up on my web page, brewhouseartstudio.com, in case you're interested. But I love this. When I worked at id, because I worked at id for a short period of time after 3D Realms, I worked on Rage, and they had folders nested inside of folders, nested inside of folders. And without this tool to quickly be able to like just jump wherever I wanted to jump to, I don't know how I would have navigated or worked it. So anyways, I use this like at work. It's free if you want to get it. Direct Folders. Just do a Google search for it, you'll find it. $20 gets you the pro version, which allows you to nest folders, which I don't have any nested here, but love it. Absolutely love it. All right, so let's get started with Motion Builder 2019. Now, full disclaimer, I use 2018 at work. That's the version that we run with. So there's probably going to be a few things in here that I'm not super familiar with. These will be a learning experience for both of us as we get in here and kind of explore things. So anyways, when I open up Motion Builder for the first time, there's a few things that I want to do. I want to go into settings, and I want to set a few things up. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and load a character, because this will help probably illustrate a few things a little bit better. So let me go ahead and open up something here. I'm going to do this, probably open up this guy right there. Um, so when you're opening it up, just to give you an idea of what's saying here, this is saying these are elements, these are animations, and these are your takes, which are different animations. And this will make more sense later. If you see this little, floppy disk, millennials are like, what's a floppy disk? But it's these are saying I'm going to load this or not load it. And you can click on it to load or not load things. Sometimes this is very helpful. Let's say you just want stuff, but you don't want like a ton of animations. You can turn off all your animations and discard all your animations, just load what's in the scene. Let's say you don't want the elements, because sometimes people change elements. You can discard your elements. So anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead and leave this kind of default. I don't need the elements, but let's open that up. All right, man. So this is a character I worked on with Starhawk. This is one of our Rifter characters. Very sad that game didn't do as well as it did. It had the potential of being amazing. This is cool looking. He's got shadows, he's got lights. I'm gonna sometime in the future, I'm gonna give a tutorial on how to set these guys up. But today we're just gonna concentrate on Motion Builder basics. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to settings. You can go to enter action mode. Enter action mode will say what key controls do you want to use. If you're a heavy Maya user, you can go to Maya. Motion Builder has its own hotkeys: 3 max, light wave, believe it or not, soft image, or soft image, soft image, however you say it. I stick with Maya. I kind of put Maya across the board. So I came from Maya. I'm familiar with Maya, and I've been using these layouts for quite some time. When you install Motion Builder, when you first run it, it'll pop that up and give you the option immediately to switch to whatever you want. Electric Huggins, hi. Whoa, did I make those? I don't know what you're talking about, but yes, I make a lot of stuff. If you're talking about this guy, no, I did not make him. But if you saw some of the little sketches I popped up, yeah, I like to illustrate. Like I said, I put myself through school illustrating, so uh, I like to doodle. Although I'm kind of more into sculpting now. By the way, when I'm kind of done here, I'll totally do a QA session. Sometimes I miss chats and stuff, so I get so focused on what I'm working on. But I definitely want to answer questions, whatever you guys have. I'll do my best to use my dyslexia to to read these texts and decipher what you guys are saying. All right, so I'm just kind of wasting time here. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into settings, preferences, and I'm gonna start scrolling through these preferences. And I'm gonna kind of give you a kind of a quick rundown of what I put my settings on. One of the things I want to show you real fast, this is kind of important. When you select something, uh, right now I'm in global, and you can see it's moving it globally. I can switch over to local, which is the hotkey is F5, and it puts it in local space. And if I go to rotation, you can see rotation is local. And then if I go to global, and I go back over to translation, you can see translation is now changed back over to global. By default, and don't ask me why Motion Builder does this, if you are in world space with your gizmo for translating and rotating, it will stay in world space no matter what you switch to. And if you are in local or object or whatever you call it, it will stay in local or object. It'll stay in local space. And to me, that is really annoying. But I'm going to show you the setting to fix this. So that way, if you want, like a lot of times I keep translation in world, and I'll keep rotation in local. By the way, this is if you don't want to use the hotkey of F5, it's this button up here. And by the way, there you can see the hotkeys by global and local. So global and local. So let's see here. Let's go back up to settings, preferences. I'm just going to go right down here and explain a few things to you. Animation, I like to keep it on use. That's default. Character. I do not like the default solver, which is the Hicks 2016 solver. It has its uses. Personally, and this just is my decade of experience using Motion Builder. Maybe I'm just an old guy that doesn't like change. I don't like it. I like the MB character solver. The MB character solver to me is probably the best solver out of the bunch. The Hicks 2016, 2014, if you're going back and forth between Maya and Motion Builder, you probably want to use the Hicks rig. But I think MB character solver is probably the best one to go with. Setting it here will make it default, and it'll become more clear later, and I'll try to explain that to you. Do not click on human finger limits because that's not good. It will prevent you from curling your fingers all the way. Don't ask me why it prevents it, but it does. Let's see. I always have to, you set these things up one time and you forget what you've set up. So every time I do this, I have to kind of go back and refresh myself. Rotation filter to apply. A lot of people like to go over to Gimbal Killer. So this is when you're plotting and baking your curves out. Some people like Gimbal Killer, some people like Unroll. I prefer Unroll. I find Gimbal Killer can actually cause problems, and you want to be very careful, and it's got to be very specific which animations you use Gimbal Killer on. So keep that Unroll. See, loading. Da, 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 da. Here's a great place where you can say how many recent files, that sort of thing. If you want more in your recents, you can add it. OpenGL, Python. If you're using custom Python scripts, you probably want to set this path to whatever your custom Python scripts are. I'm not a Python guy, but we have coders where I work that set up all these great scripts, and we uh, map our Python startup folder to wherever that is. But even if you map to a specific location, you're not going to get rid of the default Python scripts that come with Motion Builder. It will still be in your templates. Uh, Simple stuff like recording, rulers, in cap style. I switched mine from architectural to centimeter. Centimeter is what I use on Star Citizen and in our Lumberyard engine. It's what I've used on IdTech when I was working at id with their engine. It's what I used at 3D Realms in the Unreal Engine. Centimeters, I believe, is the best uh, unit to go with. It's usually 1-to-1 with whatever the game scale is. Game scale, 1 unit is 1 centimeter, generally speaking. Here's an important one, saving. So save backup files to a specific branch and keep how many backups do you want. So right now it's active by default. So whenever you save a file, what's going to happen is wherever your FBX is that you're saving out, it's going to create uh, I think it's called a BAK or FBK or FBM. It's a backup folder essentially. So every time you hit save, it's going to copy your current version of that file and put it in the backup folder and then save over the top of your FBX. You can say 4. I like to pump this up to 10. And then I don't like to save my backups with my FBX. I like to actually put it in a very specific folder. So I'm going to say save backup files. I'm going to go find a temp folder, and I always create a folder, which I think I have an old one on my machine. I'm just going to run off to. So if I go to work, I call it Mobu temp, or you can call it temp MB, or call it whatever you want. I go to my temp folder and I select it, and I'll say okay. And now every time my files back up, they're going to back up here. So when you're working on a project and you've got lots of directories, with hundreds or thousands of files that you're working with, you don't want thousands of folders shotgunned across your network drive or whatever. You want kind of them in one place, in my opinion. So by putting it in this folder, it does a couple of things. You know right where to go to get to it. Not that you wouldn't the other way. But what you'll find out is as you work, that file is going to grow and grow and grow into hundreds of megabytes to gigabytes, hundreds of gigabytes of data will eventually end up in that temporary folder. Um, and instead of having to like search and find all those folders and then delete them it's a big mess, you can go directly to that folder. You can select everything that's old and delete that and just keep the new stuff really easily. So I've worked on 100 files. I can delete like 90 of them and just keep the 10 I'm working on, or however you want to handle it. But personally, this is how I like it. I like putting it into its own separate uh, folder. See SDK. See if you're using SDK. Shading, steering wheels, story. All right, so this is story. This can come in later. So what I've liked doing is there's different tracks that are going to pop up in story, and I'll show you story in a little bit. The character animation tracks is default by 2. I actually bump it up to 4, and I'll show you why later. So remember this. Let's go to undos. Level of undos 10. Let's go to 50. There is a cap. I can't remember what the cap is, but it's probably a high number. I think 50 is usually pretty good number of undos for me. Viewer cube, and last but not least, viewer. Now, if you remember when I was talking about local and global space, this is where you fix that. So you're going to say viewer, under viewer toolbar, you're going to see store reference mode by transform mode. And you're going to click that. Now, I'm gonna say OK. And yeah. Oh, by the way, if you want to change your grid color, real quick, you can change your grid color here. I usually like to darken mine a little bit. You can also change other colors of things that make it more friendly to you. So, oh, rotation snap angle 10. Uh, for example, I like 45 degrees just because of the games I work on. It just makes it easier. Uh, so, uh, so anyways, so I'm going to click OK. And it's going to say, in order to do these settings, you're going to have to relaunch Motion Builder, which is true. Sometimes you do, but I'll relaunch Motion Builder in a little bit. You can see my grid has changed and everything. Now, if I go to rotation and then I hit translation, you can see translation is now stored in global space while rotation is, local space. Excuse me. So let's kind of go around this interface here and kind of get you familiar with what's going on outside of the menus. You got your view underneath view. You can like toggle, perspective, orthographic, schematic. There's a lot of hotkeys. If you want to get to your schematic view, it's Control W. If you want to switch cameras, R is right. If you hit, Control R is right. If you hit Control R again, it'll switch you to the left. Control F is front. Hit it again, it's the back. It's kind of small. If I zoom in on the back and I hit Control F again, you can see he's still small because they're two separate cameras. So I'll put them there. So right. Control T, that's the top. Hit it again, that's the bottom. Control E gets you back to the camera. And if you have multiple cameras in your scene, hitting Control E will actually cycle you through all the different cameras that are in your scene. If you go to display, this is where you can turn on normal, X-ray modes. X-ray, you can kind of see through your character. Here you can actually see the control rig that's on him, which is these yellow sticks and red and blue spheres on his joints. Hit Control A again, that's normal mode, and then hit Control A again, and you are in object mode. You can also display normals. So if I don't think I have, he's in groups. I'll tell you about groups here in a second. And just be able to select my head. Let's get up on his head. F will fit whatever you have selected, so it'll fit to screen. A lot like my, obviously, because these are my hotkeys. You can say normals, display normals, and you can kind of see which way the normals are facing. Now this is important because sometimes when you pull Geo into Motion Builder and it looks funny and you're like, why is the shading off? Why does it look so bad? Check your normals, because if they're pointing in the other direction in, that means whoever exported that Geo probably didn't realize that the culling was flipped in Max or something, or maybe they didn't reset Xforms or delete history if you're in Maya. So yeah, if you see any ugly geo, any weird shading, you can check it right there by saying display normals. You can also invert normals if you need to. So you can see I inverted his head normals. You can see they're all now pointing inside of his head. So yeah, if the head came in like this, I'd be like, hey, normals are bad. Let me check them. Let me go fix that. Invert normals. So, and let me hide those normals because those get annoying. So that's kind of that. You have orbit. If you that's left click. If you right click, it kind of does rotates it at the camera. You have pan. If you that's left click. If you right click, it does this kind of cool zoom in and out thing. Here's your, dolly in or truck in, whatever term you'd like to use. Zoom actually changed the FOV of your camera. And then you have bank in case you ever need to bank. Can I undo bank? I can't undo bank. There we go. Right back to it. Up here you have rulers. You can create a ruler, click, and figure out distance and metrics. And you remember when I changed the ruler from like architectural to centimeters? This is a 85.36 centimeter line I just drew from here to here. You can see it's kind of like this random line, but I'll show you like how to, you know, make it super accurate. On the game Star Citizen that I'm working on, metrics are very important, obviously. They're important in all games, but like especially games like our game, because it's important to know, you know, how tall's a chair, how tall's a desk, or how big's a chair, how tall's a desk, how tall's the bar you sit at. So we sit there and we use these rulers and we measure everything and we kind of figure out whatever those values are. This tool actually really helps a lot. And when you're done, you can just, you know, click off of it, click it back on, it's still there. When you're done with it, you can say delete ruler. If you're like, oh, I left an architectural, you can hit preferences and it'll take you right to the preferences that we were just in. Yes, yes, yes. You have splines. I'll do a quick little animation. By the way, if you're using Maya hotkeys, S is set key, just like in Maya. So I'm gonna set key here. I'm gonna set a key here, and I'm gonna turn on uh, curves so you can actually see, you know, what that is, and you can see the hand is moving up that curve. I usually don't mess with these things up here. This is your selection tool. I kind of touched on this earlier. This is your global localization, translation, rotation, scaling, snap tool. So see if I can make him look funny. So now he's snapping. Turn that off. It's like a free rotation. So turn snapping back on. If you don't want to have to go up here and click the tool, you can actually hold down J on the keyboard, and J does the same thing of, oh, did I hit play? I hit play. Sorry. J does the same thing as turning on snapping. So I hold down J and I snap. Here's a pro tip. This is something that one of my guys figured out and is super, super helpful. I can move this hand around. I can move this hand around. And if I want to be a little more precise with my movements, you can right click and get micro movement. So that's a right click, micro movement, or regular movement. So if you're like, oh, I'm trying to get that thing on the thing, I got to try to get his hand placed just right. If I right click, you can see that, you see how much my cursor is moving compared to the hand versus just grabbing it and moving it around. It pretty much follows the cursor almost exactly. Things down here, this right here is your pivot, different types of selection modes. This is your model, vertex, or pivot selection. That'll be more clear later as I get into deeper tutorials. If you want to select just joints, you can click that on and you'll only be able to select skeleton, pieces of skeleton. This is, I think that's Geo, right? No, that's, oh, those are markers. If I had markers in the scene, which do I? No, I have nulls in the scene. Oh, this is a marker. That's marker. Is that not a marker? Yeah. So these are markers. So control rigs are made of markers. So it's only selecting those markers by having that turned on. This is nulls. You can see it's now I'm only selecting the nulls that are in the scene. So it's a kind of a great way of, if you only want to select one thing, you can, instead of selecting everything, you can just say, I just want nulls and select it. This also works in the schematic view, by the way. So if you have something like with let's say you want to select all the joints, for example, I can do that, and I've only selected the bones. You can see them highlight green there. Or if I just want to select markers, I can do that. It just selected the control rig or nulls, you know. So there you go. Then cameras, lights, and various other things. Over here, your character controls. They got a new feature in 2019, which I'm kind of excited to try out. It's this pinning option, so you can create presets. This is new to me. So yeah, I have a feeling I know what this does. So let me hop back over here and I'll kind of give you a quick rundown. These these two keys right here toggle on and off. That's IK. These are all these big spheres are IK. So that's toggling on and off visibility of IK. This is toggling off the yellow stick joints or markers or whatever you want to call it. Those that's all FK. And if I want to turn on his skeleton, I can click that button. It's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can punch in here. And yeah, just toggling this will turn on and off his skeleton. So let's, you know, uh, right here you have different modes. This is element. I usually never use element mode. It's for very specific purposes, which I usually don't ever touch on. This is body part. So if I want, like, when I set the key on his, see, I got nulls selected. I have to turn off nulls. So like I selected his hand, when I keyed him, you can see I've got these red keys down here in my timeline. I did full body keys. These are full body keys because they're red, very easily identifiable. And it's because I was on full body mode. If I go to body part mode, you can see that most of his body kind of grays out, which is really nice. And then whatever part I have selected, you can see it highlights everything that's going to get keyed. So if I come in here and let's say I set another key, S, oh, silly me. Let me go to 5 and set a key. There we go. Set a key here. It's only set it on the arm. And you can see that the key here is actually green. So that tells me that it's on the body part, or this part being the arm from the clavicle down to the hand. This does not include fingers. Fingers is its own body part. And excludes the rest of the body. This is a really great way of being able to like key an entire, just an element versus like an entire body. This is a new feature, I want to say as of last release, which I never really use. It's kind of like a full body mode kind of a thing. Full body, no pull manipulation. So I guess it doesn't allow you to pull. So it's not pulling his chest. If I go over to full body like that and I do the same thing, it's actually going to pull him over using full body IK. Now you may be asking yourself, well, but his hips are locked. Well, down here is your controls. And you can see I've got his hips are pinned. His hips are pinned with the translation and rotation. So if I click that off and I grab his hand and I start to pull, you can see it's actually pulling his whole body down and over. From his, let me undo that a couple times. From his, I want to say from his clavicle. Yeah, his clavicle's kind of being a little bit. You can see right here his clavicle. I'm pointing at my monitor like you can see me. His clavicle's kind of going up, but kind of, you can actually tweak that under some settings for realistic shoulder solving, which we can get to in a little bit. I had mine at a very specific value because it's what I prefer to work with whenever I'm hand keying or doing motion editing. So anyway, so pinning. So I unpinned his hips. I unpinned his feet are still pinned. So if I come down here and I start moving around, you can see I can also quickly pin his hand. So now if because I'm in full body mode, I'm able to grab his hips and start moving around. If I click off a full body and go back onto body part, you can see his hand is moving with it because, anybody know? I'll tell you why. Because his feet have IK turned on. See how these nodes are green? These nodes, and I'm going to try to explain the symbiotic relationship between the FK rig, the IK rig, and the skeleton, because they all kind of work together in order to be able to animate this character. So his feet are turned off. I came in here and I like turned IK off of his foot. I'm just going to do that foot and start moving around. You see his foot is actually now moving with the body, while his left foot is still trying to maintain that IK lock onto the ground. But sometimes you'll want to like spin the whole character. I need this guy to face this way, but his feet are locked. Maybe his hand is pinned. You want to set a full body key. So I'm trying to turn on full body. I want to set a full body key over here, but his hand's locked. His feet are locked. That's where this unpinning tool comes in. You click this unpinning tool right here, and now you can like freely rotate him, turn it off. It's just a quick way of unpinning everything. Which kind of leads me into this new feature in 2019 that I am unfamiliar with, which is create presets. I have a feeling you can create presets of what you want pinned and what you don't want pinned. And if it does what I think it does, this is going to be really cool. I'm going to wish that I had 2019 at work to work with, because there's a lot of times I'll want to keep, let's say, his feet pinned or his hands pinned, but want to rotate the rest of his body. But I don't want to have to go through the trouble of selecting body parts and going up here and unpinning them, rotating, and then having to repin every time. So I have a feeling that's going to be pretty cool. This button right here is a stance button. If you click that, he goes right back into his original stance, which is his default binding pose. Down here, you have IK blend translation and rotation. This is reach, essentially. So let's see if I can explain how this works. Remember when I turned his feet green? Well, any IK node you can blend on and off. And this actually works better than so far any system I've ever seen in Maya or Max, or dare I say Softimage. I'm not real familiar with Softimage, but this works better than any rig that I've ever used from anybody who's actually hand created a rig. The only thing that's ever come close is um, a rig in 3D Studio Max. It's a plugin called Cat Toolkit. Cat Toolkit is absolutely amazing um, for dealing with IK and FK and blending back and forth. And that's what this does. So you can see his hand is down here. I want to turn his IK on. So I'm just going to turn that on. And I'm going to say, well, okay, he snapped back to his animation where I set the key, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to move his hand. And let's see, how's a great way to explain this? So I'm going to set a key here. I'm going to have him come down. I'm going to pin his hand first. And we're going to have him come down, set a key. You can see how his hand has come down and his hand is locked, because it doesn't matter that it's pinned. If because I set a key, that's IK. That IK is locking his hand right there in space. So now I want him to go to FK for whatever reason. I can come over here. Well, I'm going to set a key. Key. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn it off. Key. And now I can just rotate his arm. Oh, it's still pinned. I'm going to rotate his arm. FK style. I'm going to rotate his arm again. And you'll kind of see what I mean, and you'll actually see it here in the curve as well, kind of what it's doing. Because the IK is definitely doing something different than the FK right now. And as it blends on, you can see kind of the influence. It stays IK locked, but as he comes down, it blends off to do whatever I want him to do. Maybe he's going to stand back up right here. He's going to reach up. So now it's locked, but now he's like kind of going up and down. Sorry, excuse the rudimentary animation. I'm just trying to figure out how to explain kind of how this works. So as long as it doesn't matter what I do to the curves on this hand. If I go over to my F curve editor and I come over here to let's go to this frame right here, and I hit, let's say, rotation. I'm going to zoom into these curves and I start playing with my rotation. You can see I'm actually manipulating his hand right here, right? But if I come out here where the IK is now turned off and I try rotating his hand, you can see nothing's happening, and nothing's happening because there's no influence on that IK. If I come over here where there's like partial influence from the IK and I start playing with this curve, you can see it's actually having a little bit of an effect. Not as much as if it was fully turned on, and let's say I'm editing right here. But it'll have a little bit, and then once it's fully turned off, these curves on the IK will have absolutely no influence on the control rig. If I actually want to now manipulate his hand via FK, I'd have to actually select the FK, which is this stick right here, and go to his rotation. Now I can easily manipulate the FK. If I can select that. There we go. So now I'm rotating the FK of his hand. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I'll probably touch more on this later, and probably in other tutorials, kind of how this works. This all works together. So I'm just going to put them back up here. Moving down, right down here in our transport controls, we have little, things to inform us of what's going on. We have story. Story is this thing right here. It's our nonlinear editor. This thing is amazing. You can do a ton of things in here. You got this, because it's blue, I can tell you story is active. This is very important because if you're ever like, why is my animation not working? I'm not able to key something. You can be like, oh, look, story's on. Go to story. You'll see, oh, there's a track in here with some animation. Let me turn story off. You can see that there's a story off button right down here as well. So story. Then you have different actions. Here's your takes. We only have one default take in here right now, but if you had, multiple animations in one file, which is one of the things that makes Motionbuilder super powerful, is being able to have, dozens. I've had 200. I don't recommend it. 200 animations in a single file. I don't recommend it because, man, is that file size big, and boy, does it take forever to save. But sometimes it's necessary, especially if you're doing a batch process, like maybe you need to retarget 200 animations to a new skeleton or something. But yeah, you'll see all your takes here. Then you got time, and right now you can see it's counting up to frame 38. Right next to his incremental frames. Right now I have, as you can see over here, I'm kind of jumping ahead, snap and play on frames. If I go to no snap, I can scrub, and you can see I'm actually going in between frames. So you get the main keys, and then you get the incremental keys. But there's different settings. You have no snap, which is you get everything. You have snap on frames, so it'll snap on the frames. You'll be able to key on the frames, but when you do playback, you can see the incremental keys playing right here. You have play on frames, so now it's only playing on the frames. You can see there's no incremental frames scrolling through there. Then you have snap and play on frame. So now everything's going to snap and play on a frame. So let me play on frames. So yeah, if I'm just play on frames, I still can scrub to an incremental frame, but when I hit play, I will not play. So sometimes when you're hand keying something, or you got to do a motion edit, and you're like, man, I really wish I could get a key between here and here because I kind of that's my timing that I need. You can easily turn that off, scrub over here, set your key in your incremental frame, and turn it back on to snap, and that will usually give you the timing in your animation that you desire. You obviously have like playback functionality right here, like skip to the back, well, I guess it would help if this is your loop tool. I'm going to turn that off so this will actually function, but you can skip back a frame. You can see it's actually, because I have loop turned on, I was able to go and it wraps to the end of the animation and allows me to keep going back. I've got play backwards, stop, play forwards, go forward incremental frames, and then skip to the end. There's also keys in here. If you hit hotkeys like control period, or is it control period, or I'm sorry, not control period, it's just period or comma. The keyboard will toggle you back and forth between the different keyframes, wherever those are at. Holding down control, did I get this right? Holding down control and using your arrow keys, well, you can either arrow right or you can arrow left. So that's pretty good functionality. You might be like, how come I'm clicking in here and my thing is not my I'm not going to that point in the timeline that I want to get my little thing onto. I want to be on frame 15, but I can't just click on it. Well, there's reasons behind it. So what they did was they said right click. So if you right click, so right click, middle click. I think they changed the hotkey on me. If you middle click, you can uh, get to anywhere you want. Speaking of hotkeys, I'll show you how you can set up your own custom hotkeys as well, because you can really customize Motion Builder to your liking. Right now I'm using the default layout, but you can actually pull all these panels apart and dock them however you want to dock them. You can pull them off onto a second monitor. I actually work on a second monitor, and I have my own very specific layout that I like to use. Working in this default edit layout, I'm going to be like, oh no, I'm just, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Um, and I'll get very frustrated because things aren't where I want them to be. Uh, so then you have one speed, two, this is how fast things are playing. So this is, at speed. I can slow things down by half. Oh, by the way, the hotkey for just playing is Control Spacebar. If you don't want to come up here and click that, you just hit be anywhere. You hit Control Spacebar and that will play. Hit Control Spacebar again, it will stop. But yeah, so there's half speed, there's whatever, 20th, 1/20th speed, whatever. Let's go back to normal speed. Or you can play all frames. Like if you want to see absolutely every frame, of course it's playing really fast right now because my machine's fast and it's able to render out each frame really fast. But if you, let's say, had a really heavy scene and you're having some playback issues, you could totally hit all frames and it would be slow, but you would get to see every frame and the lag that you get won't cause you to like make a mistake. And then, obviously you can play twice as fast and 3 times as fast and so on and so forth. But I'm going to stick with 1x. That's good. Here's your frames per second. As you can see, Motion Builder goes all the way up to 1,000 frames a second. I've never used 1,000 frames a second, but you can go up to it. Usually when motion capture comes in, motion capture is shot around 120 frames a second. And when I do one of my motion capture tutorials, I'll kind of explain why it does that. But it does it at 120 frames a second. So you'll get it in. So a lot of times you'll be like here and be like, wow, this animation's like hundreds of frames long, and not realize that no, you're 120 frames a second. Let me drop down to 30. And oh no, it's only 60. It's not 120. Of course, you have all your standard 24 frames, 23.97 NTSC with drop and NTSC full. Usually in the video game industry, 30 frames a second is pretty standard for animation. I'm sure there's probably some games out there that say 60 now, but on my game, which is pretty cutting edge, it's 30 frames a second. But yeah, this is good to note if you're like having to work on, a movie or something like that. Right. Moving on to Navigator. Navigator is just kind of how you navigate your entire scene. Under scene, you're going to have all your objects. Under audio, if you drop it in the audio files, that's where that will go. It'll show up there. You have your cameras. If you remember, I was switching between front, back, left, right. And this is what we're in right now. It's called producer perspective. You can see which camera you're on right here in the bottom corner of your screen. See in producer perspective. If I went to front view, you can see it switched over to front. Switch back to producer perspective. And in here you have different controls. Sometimes you'll have a scene that's really big, and you can see it's actually starting to hit that clipping plane way out there. So in producer perspective, you can come in here and switch the default far plane. Just add a 0 in there, and all of a sudden you can see your scene. Like if you have a really big set you're working on, sometimes that's pretty helpful to be able to navigate around it and see what you see. We have some very big ships in Star Citizen, and sometimes you can't see the whole thing, so we bump that up so that we can see the whole thing. Of course, you got your field of view and all sorts of other things that you can mess with. If you create your own camera, like a new camera, it will pop up in here. Here's your character. As you can see here, I've got a character in here, which is this guy right here. And under here, you'll find all the controls, which I'll talk about later on. Let's see. Then you have your control rig. So the rig that I've been messing with is here. If I select control rig, you can see it's actually highlighted the character and character. So if you had like 20 characters or 2 characters, you're like, which one's which? And you didn't name it, you left it at default character rig. You'd be like, which one's which? You can easily select it, and it will highlight whatever character that's associated with. Character extensions. Whenever you create, it's another topic I'll cover later, but you can create extensions like weapon joints and all sorts of other fun little bits and bobs on your character that you want to animate. So you create these character extensions again by selecting character extensions. You can see it's highlighted the character up in here because in these character extensions, it's got something in there. Close all that down. In fact, I'm going to just raise this up. But you can actually move this stuff around if you want by grabbing these bars. Constraints. I've got some constraints set up on this guy. But you can easily right click on here and say insert constraint and pick like parent child or whatever. You can also go do it through your asset browser. Asset browser is over here, which we'll touch into, but a lot of things that you can create here, such as constraints or character extensions, you can actually find over here under characters or constraints. Here's constraints. You got groups. Groups is another thing I'll talk about. There's groups are over here. So when you create groups, you'll probably want to manage them. You can do some managing here, but if you're like, let's say, wanting to nest this folder into that folder, you would come over here and you would do it. You can also open this up and you can see what's associated inside that. So if I open up weapons, I can see I have all these weapons that I've added, different rifles, guns and stuff. And they're all living here underneath weapons. And if I open that up, I can actually see what is inside that group. And I can remove something specifically, like if I want to move it here, or I can update it over here. It's really what works best at the time. But as you can see, if I come over here and I select this object, you can see that under scenes, it's actually highlighted what's up here. So if you're ever like, where's the thing that I'm trying to click on, you can select it, and a lot of times it will highlight here. And that includes textures, which I'll show you here in a second. So sets, that's something else. It's very similar to groups, but think about being able to hide and unhide something and key it to turn on and off. That's kind of what sets are. If you have namespaces, namespaces will show up here. So something to note with MotionBuilder, you can't have 2 objects named the same. If you create something with 2 objects, it's automatically going to put a 1 or a 2, or it's going to increase the digit, the iterate or the version of it. So if I brought in another one of these guys, like merged him into the scene, it would, if I don't put a namespace on it, it would literally append a 1 to the back of everything that I merge in. And it sucks when that happens because usually you have to rebuild your whole file. So, or reload a save, your last save. So you have namespaces in there. Lights, if you have lights, show up there. Materials, this is a very messy materials folder. You know what? I'm just gonna switch back over to here because why not look at me for a second? Funny story or interesting story, whatever you want to call it. When I was at Lightbox, which is where this character came from, this character came out of the game Starhawk when I was working at Lightbox. I'm very sad Lightbox is no longer around. That's not the funny story, or the interesting story. At Lightbox, I was the only animator. So the entire duration of the project, the entire 3 years that I spent on that project, I did 100% of all animation in that game. Well, 99% of all animation that was in that game. Kyle Rockman, who is our tech animator who did all the rigs and a lot of scripting and stuff for us, did a bunch of little bits and bobs on things that are mechanical, but everything else I did. It was a small company. Loved the company. It We had one effects artist, James Mestemaker, did all the effects. We had one main character modeler who did all the characters. We had one environment, guy who did all the environments. One vehicle guy who did all the vehicles and weapons and stuff. So it's a small company and a great group of guys. But yeah, I was the only animator. So if this file is messy, that's why. I didn't have to worry about anybody else sharing these files with me. But I'm going to show you how to organize these files and make them very easy to use, especially if you're working with a large group of people. On the game I'm working on right now, shoot, we've got a ton of animators across 4 or 5 different studios now, and let's see, Austin, Derby, Manchester, Frankfurt. So yeah, four studios. We have animators across 4 studios, and we all have to kind of work together and have very clean files to work with. So I will show you how to right click on one of these and insert a folder, which is way down here. Select everything that you want to go into that folder and drop it in. Now my materials is much prettier, much nicer to look at and work with. You can do that with every one of these groups: lighting, namespaces, groups. Technically, you create a new group when you do that. Constraints, character extensions. Every one of these things in here, you can create a folder and organize it. Create mini folders, lots of folders. In fact, I think my constraints had a folder. Yeah, power armor. Had a. You can see why I threw all my constraints into this folder. There's a bunch of stuff in there. So where were we at? Shaders. So things like live shadow, which is what you see in my scene right here, where you can see the live shadow. You can put bump mapping on, all sorts of transparency, all sorts of fun little things that you want to see in render live in your scene. You can apply. I'll show how I set up a scene probably in one of my next tutorials, how I set all that stuff up. Takes, again, remember when I said here's your takes right here, you get to them. Here's where you can actually view everything as a whole. If I double click on it, by the way, everything is a double click in here. You can switch it to a one click. I think this is it, single click. So now if I single click, it will switch to whatever it is, whatever I'm getting ready to click. Some of these don't have sub things like groups, doesn't have it, but like takes and streams and constraints do. I don't like the single click. Some of you may. It's really user preference. So I'm going to uncheck that. So I have to actually double click on one of these to look at it. Double clicking on it not only will select it, it will expand whatever is underneath that node. So anyways, yeah, takes, if you had like 20 takes, 50 takes, whatever, you'd see them right in here. And if I double clicked on take, you would get take information and you would actually see all the takes in here. And I'll kind of show you how that works more later when I actually have a lot of animations to look at. But you get a lot of information like local start, local stop, duration. If you have reference, let's say you pulled some stuff in from motion capture, a lot of times I'll have reference start and reference stop, which are completely different numbers, especially if you're using timecode. You've got textures. Again, a lot of textures on this guy because I'll show you kind of how he's built when I get over here to the groups. Videos. I don't know how I can explain this. So if you, yeah, they call it videos, but really what it is, if I double click on this, it's a texture. You can see here's one of the character's heads. Here's one of the character's hair. So these textures are technically they can be actual videos. End up going into a texture. You can see again, I have this selected, which highlights what it is in here. Boom, there it is. So if I click on that texture, I can get more information. And then click on whatever that is. And if I come all the way up, if I'm like, hey, where does that texture live on what piece of geometry? I can select here and just kind of start navigating my way through to find wherever that material is or what object it's on. It's on that mesh head, which is hidden right now. So there are some other things that you can do in here. Oh, by the way, system. You can set up, you can monitor your performance if you're getting lag and that sort of stuff. You can tweak your settings. You can turn on GPU skinning. So, uh, you know, now your video card is doing all the skinning on your character. I was very excited to see dual quaternion skinning. And then I discovered that it doesn't work. It's actually broken. So don't use dual quaternion skinning until they fix it. Autodesk, if you're listening, you're probably not listening, but if you ever do listen to this, Autodesk, please fix dual quaternion skinning. It's important. It works in Maya. Please let it work in Motion Builder. Doesn't seem like it should be all that difficult. But anyways, this is just where you can manage some of these settings and monitor your performance and try to get a better performance. Uh, by the way, I have dealt with Motion Builder and I have dealt with Maya, and I have had large scenes, duplicate scenes in both packages. And Motion Builder by far handles large scenes better than any other package I've really ever used. It's literally made for animation and being able to crunch those numbers. You can't do other things in Motion Builder. You can't model, you can't rig, really. You can throw in joints and stuff, but you can kind of do some weighting if you really need to. I wouldn't do weighting in Motion Builder though. I'd do that in a different package. But Motion Builder is really built for animating specifically. Well, I shouldn't say specifically, primarily, biped and sometimes quadruped characters. Although one of the guys I worked with did animate the Octobrain from Duke Nukem Forever in Motion Builder. That was fun to watch. So anyways, system. Moving along these tabs, you have dope sheets, which, just an easy way of selecting things, moving stuff around. F curves, which is graph editor. Basically, you select a, boom, you got your graphs keys. So some things to note inside the graph editor or the F curve editor. If I have something selected, it's part of the control rig, and whether it's a part of this actual control rig or part of a character extension that I've added to this rig, you will see the translation rotation show up as green. This tells me that this, whatever it is that's selected, is part of a control rig and will bake down whenever I bake my animations down. Story is your non-linear editor. You can easily insert a character animation track, select the character in your scene, in this case it's character, and then insert a current take. And then if I want to move this around to here, I can move it there. See, frame start to end. Now I'm no longer at frame 0, I'm at frame whatever, 90. It's an incremental frame because I only have play on frames on. I didn't turn on snap on play on frames. I'll get into this a little bit later. I'll show you exactly how this functions, probably in a different tutorial. Frame start to end. That's just a quick way of like framing whatever you have in here. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. I can come up here and click delete, or I believe I can just select that and hit delete on the keyboard. So something to note in Motion Builder, there are a lot of ways to do the same thing, many different ways to do the same task or same thing or same function. Sometimes, it's no big deal. It's just, I'm going to, go to my character, for example, and plot my character down here to skeleton, cancel. Or I can come up here and say plot to skeleton, and plot there, and back to the control, vice versa, going back to the control rig. You can also do it in story. If I inserted a character animation track and put in my character and inserted a current take, like you can actually click on here and say, Um, Plot whole scene to current take. Now, yes, there are. I just showed you 3 ways to do the same thing. One of them, one of these things is not like the other. So uh, there are multiple ways to do the same thing, but sometimes you get slightly different results. If I showed the first 2 ways I showed you, would just bake all your hand key animation or your mocap that you've been editing down to the skeleton, you plot it back, it plots back to the control rig, done and done. Now, you're ready to move on. If you come in here and actually plot a whole scene to current take, believe it or not, it will actually come into your character controls, which we'll look at in another tutorial. And it will actually start keying all this stuff in here and start screwing up uh, your control rig. And you don't want that to happen, especially if you're trying to pull lots of motion capture onto your character. Because these controls are actually very, very vital. So things like I talked about before, like realistic shoulder solving, which is right here, uh, I turn that up whenever I'm actually doing a retarget to motion. Oh, I got. Why isn't this moving? Story's turned on. So whenever I'm trying to do some motion capture, I'll turn that up pretty high usually because that works best for importing motion capture and retargeting motion capture onto your character. But when I actually hand key, I actually turn this all the way off because I want to have control of how that clavicle is. And if I come in here into story, which is, you can see it's grayed out now because I've turned it off up here, but I'm going to turn it on right here. If I plot it down here and it's baked keys onto that and I try to pull more motion capture onto it, well, guess what happens? I now got to go into the character controls and I have to delete all that. And it's a pain. I know because I've done it. I haven't done it just once. I've done it multiple times. In fact, I'm like, why is nothing working? Hold on. I'm like working away. I'm like, why are things not working? How come I can't pull this motion on there? How come it keeps going all wonky and crazy? And then I discovered there's keys on my character controls. How is that? How are those keys getting on there? And then I discovered it's through that. It's it's going on through the story, and I'm just like, all right. Well, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. So transition while I'm in story. Instead of doing it here, I don't have to plot to my skeleton here. I just go right up here and say plot skeleton. Boom, done. Plot control rig. Boom, done. And I never ever use that. Now you say, well, hey, you never use it. Why would it be there? Why would they put that there? Well, in the cinematic universe, in movies and such, you're gonna have a big scene with lots of characters. You're gonna have cameras that are moving, lights that are animated, things that eventually need to export into whatever Maya or whatever you're using to do your final quality control. But you're doing all this stuff, and you don't want to lose that data. So you'll use plot whole scene to current take, and it's going to plot all these keys all over the place and lock down your scene so that when you do send it down the pipeline and it ends up in a render farm, all your animation is preserved and there's not a mistake. So hopefully that explains it. Animation trigger is just ways of triggering animations. Whatever, 12 years using Motionbuilder, I've never used animation triggers. It's uh, just not something I've ever used. But feel free to experiment and play. In fact, if you really learn animation triggers, why don't you send me a tutorial? I'd love to see how you guys work it. Key controls. Key controls are ways of also handling how you animate and your character. So some things that I want you to take note under key controls. You can this is how you set what kind of curves you're keying. You got spline and clamped and linear and TCB and smooth and smart clamp. Right now, by default, because again, I'm loading 2019 up for the first time, it's set to auto. But what I want to do is I want to set it to smart clamp. I'll explain more to that later, but I like smart clamp personally. Under animation, There's a bunch of things you can actually plot. Again, you can plot up here, you can plot down here, you can plot over there. Um, you can plot all properties, you can plot selected properties. It gives you maybe a little bit more control over plotting if you need something really fine-tuned. Let's say I have an object that's not part of a character extension, but I really want to bake that animation down. I can select it, come here and plot all properties, and it will bake whatever that is down without me having to create a character extension, for example. Take options. This is very important. Take options. So remember when I said you can do multiple takes in Motion Builder? Well, you have normal, which means if I take an object in one take and I move it somewhere else in the universe, uh, in the next take, it's still where I moved it to. If it's on multi-take, that means when I go to the next, I take that object, I move it all the way over to the universe somewhere, and then I go to the next take, it all of a sudden is back where it originally was. So different things, don't ask me why. When you pull them into Motion Builder, like nulls and markers, they all come in. Some come in as a normal, some come in as a multi. It depends on what you're pulling in. My rule of thumb is I'll select everything that's important, that I deem important, and I'll set it to normal. And there are various reasons why, especially the skeleton. Skeleton on your character, in my opinion, here's the character's here's the character skeleton. It's, in my opinion, it's very important to have that on normal, especially if you get some sort of like an anomaly in the translation, so that uh, you can go back later and actually fix it. And I can show you fun, clever ways of actually fixing a broken skeleton in here without very much effort. And if I knew Python better, I would definitely create a script to be able to script all that. So where was I? Base animation. So right now, this is your layers. So base animation. If you create a new layer, boom, you can see I'm now on animation layer 1. Same thing. You can whatever. Auto key. Turn on auto key. So now if I, where am I at? Come over here. Scroll. See. Let me select that guy right there. Let me delete this. Delete. Don't want story mucking things up, right? So rule of thumb again as story, if you're ever like, how come things are weird? Delete your track. Sometimes junk gets in there, and it's just best if you just delete it and start over from scratch. Where was I? Animation layer, full body. Again, full body. My full body parts, TRS. These are just another ways of keying. You can zero out keys. This is very helpful. You can set keys. Oh, I remember auto key. All right, so full body. And come down here. I'm just gonna raise that up. You can see I've auto keyed it because auto key. I never use auto key. I shouldn't say that. I very rarely. I mean, there has to be a very specific reason for me to use auto key. I definitely prefer to just hit the key button, which is S. All right, so animation layers. Oh yeah, all this stuff should be pretty self-explanatory, I think. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those. You have animation layers. Animation layers. You have your base animation. Usually that's where the layer your mocap is on. Animation layers 1 is an you can set it to be additive or override. By default, it's an additive. So let's see if I. So for example, this guy's doing this, right? But let's say I wanted him to be lower. I'm just going to add a layer. Excuse me. Pull him down like this, set a key because it's an additive. He's doing everything, but he's doing everything lower, and his knees are flipping. Or maybe twist him. Now he's doing everything, but he's doing everything lower because it's an additive. It's an additive thing. I'm just going to delete all that. You can right click and say delete, or you can select everything and say, click this little button and say delete. You can also merge down, merge your layers, um, which will bake everything from an upper layer to a lower layer. So if, for example, you're doing a lot of animation on your control rig, but you don't want to quite necessarily bake it down to your skeleton just yet, you can merge all your keyed data from one of your layers to your base layer, and still and not overwrite the data that's on the skeleton. And when I talk more about the symbiotic relationship between the control rig, and the skeleton and the IK and the FK and all that, it'll probably make more sense. Typically, I don't care. I've done enough motion editing. I actually prefer to just come right up here and say plot to skeleton, plot to control rig, back and forth, and I'm back on my base layer and I'm good to keep going. So pose controls. So if you want to create a pose, you just select your character and create a pose, and it creates a little thumbnail. Now, don't ask me why. Maybe I'm hoping they changed something in 2019, but they decided to make these thumbnails really small for some reason. But yeah, so I've created a pose, and if I move that character someplace else, I can paste that pose right back onto him. Excuse me. You can see he's actually shifted off of his space, and he shifted off of his space because of my settings. If I turn my settings back on, see these are off, so that means wherever he's at, wherever he's at over here, and I hit paste, it's going to paste that pose relative to his location or rotation. If I turn on rotation, oh, let me turn on translation. If I turn on, let's say, just translation, and I hit paste, it's going to put him right back where that pose was originally created. If he was created up in the air, like wherever, see, pinning. So let's say it was created up in the air, it would put him back up here in the air. But you have a gravity function which will allow you to turn on gravity and pop him back down to the ground if you need to. Rotation. So if I want to get that pose back on him and he's rotated, just, oh, see, I don't have rotation on, but I had translation on. Click on rotation. Boom, he's rotated back into place. I know, as much as I love Motionbuilder, this is very confusing. Grayed out, not grayed out, selected, not turned on, turned off. It can be very confusing. You can see why is grayed out, by the way, because I have gravity turned on, which means it's going to be wherever it's at, or wherever it's originally created. If I turn gravity off, it opens up Y, which will allow me to place him anywhere and paste that pose on. All right, so I can also turn on a single axis. So a lot of times this helps with creating walk cycles. You got to paste that initial walk pose on the front or the end of it, and you need him to snap only in the, let's say he's walked backwards this way, and you want to paste that pose, but only in the X. You hit paste, and he only pastes onto the X. This is like I said, for like walk cycles where they're transitioning or moving forward or backwards or somewhere, and you want to get them in a very right back on track. It's a very helpful way to do it. You can control you can rename your poses, you can manage them, you can create folders, insert folders just like you can over there in the Navigator. You can drop your poses in there. Excuse me, I was coughing there. Gotta mute myself. But anyway, you can you know, manage your poses. You got properties. So anything that you select in the level, no matter what it is, has properties. Properties are found in the properties level. If you want to go to group, you can group by type, group by all, no grouping. So for example, everything that has a visibility, everything by a specific type. So all the nulls will have this visibility channel exposed if I do group by type. And if I select null and something else, I have to select something else, don't I? you'll see that it's expanded this, and I have like multiple things, like multiple visibilities now, visibility here and visibility there, because they're different objects. I've got a marker and a null because it's grouped by type. If I say group all, it will take all the very common properties and put them into one. So, for example, I want to change a property on something very specific, on a very specific property on a bunch of things, like culling, like we talked about before with uh, geometry and it coming in with normals and how it was exported. Under view, where is it? I guess it would help if I actually selected his head. So viewer options. See, markers and nulls have different settings than geo, and geo has culling. So right now set to both. I can set it to outer only. It doesn't look like anything happened. Let me show you what did happen though. If I zoom into his head, you can see I can actually see through his head now. And if I turn calling from outer to both, you can see I can see outside and inside. And if I set it to inner, you can only see it inner, and he looks pretty crazy, huh? So that's another great way of like, hey, my geo is kind of weird. Let me turn on my calling. Let me put it to outer. And if it looked like how you just saw, then you're like, hey, Mr. Modeler guy, go fix this. So that's properties. Filters. When you're doing animations and you're working in the F-curve editor, let me see if I grab something. Translation rotation. I'm gonna make a really extreme curve here just for demo purposes. There we go. So I'm gonna make a really extreme curve. Plot to skeleton, plot back to control rig. He's gonna snap back into place because I didn't set a key, so he's back over there. But you can see it's actually baked down this animation. And you can see that there's a very sharp angle right here. So with filters, I can actually go in here and I can smooth stuff out. So I'll click on smooth. I'm set to 30 frames a second, so I like to use a width of 2. To me, that's best. I turn off quaternions and I hit preview, and you can see it's actually smoothed that out. Let's say 2 is not enough. I want to go up to 4. Preview. You can see it's changed it more, but it started to warp it. Go back to 2. Preview it again. Preview. Reset. Okay, so that's the reset. That's the preview. If I like it, I click accept. Let me undo that. Let's say I just want to do a section of it. I can select a section of this. I can smooth. I'll do a 4. There you go. And you can see it's just a way of running filters on your curve editor, basically. And there's a lot of different things in here. Smooth is probably the one I use the most. Occasionally, when you get motion capture in, you'll see his hips flipping. And that's due to gimbal. This is where I'm talking about unroll versus gimbal. You probably want to still keep things on unroll, but they do have a gimbal killer right here. And go to, well, there's no rotation on his hips, but if there was and there was gimbal, it would actually apply an unroll filter, unroll, and it would fix his hips, fix that gimbal, that horrible gimbal. Then you have your asset browser. Asset browser is where just everything is. It's kind of like your toolbox. So if I'm like, hey, I really need a box in my scene, I can just go grab a primitive real fast and put a box in my scene or whatever. When I'm creating a character, this is where you find characters. Drag this right onto your character. And so anyway, hold on. I'm going to apologize here. Let me switch back here. Got a text from one of my guys like, how do I subscribe to your channel? I'm going to say, I don't know. Told her, I have no idea. I'm new to this. I have no idea how this works. I'm assuming it's the little heart button at the top that says follow. And hopefully when I get enough subscribers, I get to become one of these associates or something like that on Twitch. And then you can like subscribe and do all that fun stuff and help support me doing more tutorials and encourage me to do more tutorials. All right, transition back and forth back there. So anyways, hey Dash, if you're watching, I just tried to answer your question. All right. So yeah, if I was building a character from scratch, which I'm going to show in another tutorial down the road, this is where I grab it. This, drag it on the guy. Blah. Here's a character extension where I said there's multiple ways to do the same thing. Just go over there and drag it right on. Uh, the pink werewolf. Hey, how's it going? Um, and to anybody who's like just now joining, I'm going to try my best to kind of like look over at the chat and see what's going on. But definitely when I'm like at the end, I'm going to be like, hey, is there any questions? And you guys can like type in your questions. I'll try to answer them the best I can for as long as I can. So anyways, asset browsers. Yeah, so assets. This is where your scripts are. You want to run a script. They're all in here. Um, you can actually you can map your own folders. Let's say if a folder you go into a whole lot, you can actually map your own folder into here. You have different views that you can apply. I personally like where was it? I totally screwed it up. Scripts, templates, elements. There, back to where I was at. This is a view I like. It's just my own personal preference. I like being able to see the name next to whatever the little icon is. All right, asset browser. Then you have groups and you have sets. And these are kind of the same, but kind of different. So when I set this file up, I took all my characters and I set up all the heads in here so I can turn off head 4. I just happened to like working with that guy back in the day. And I can turn on head 1, which he always scared me. 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Leave on 4. I've got all my torso set up in groups, so I can like change outfits really fast. So this is really nice. Silly cowboy. Big armor. I like the big armor. So yeah, it's just a kind of a really nice way of organizing your file. I mean, I did this with this guy's loadout, his outfits and his bits and pieces. But I mean, weapons, sets, things that you just want to hide and unhide really fast. Whole characters, um, environments. Do I have anything in the environments? No, just the ground and lights. So I can turn off my ground. I can turn off my there's default Motionbuilder. That's what he would look like if I didn't have a few bells and whistles turned on. So other things like, if you notice when I came over here to heads, I ticked on pick. So it allows me to select his head, but I can't select his torso or any of the other geo because I have it ticked off. I can tick off pick here, and I'm no longer able to select his geo. So a lot of times when you're working in a file, you got big sets, you got lots of complicated stuff. It's great to put them into a group and turn off pick so you can't accidentally select it because, yeah, it just makes life easier. Sets is very similar. I don't have any set set up here, but if I wanted to, I could, let's say, add a bunch of objects just like how I did in groups. In fact, you know what? I will go ahead and I'll grab something that's in here. Let me see what I got. What do I have under weapons? Do I have any weapons in here? Got a rifle. Yeah, here's his rifle. So I'm going to select his rifle. By the way, if I want to select the rifle and pick is turned off, see, pick, turn it on. Now I can pick it. So let's say I want to select that object, if I don't want to have to tick things on and off, I can actually just select that group like that. It will select anything that's in that group. So that's just an easy way of selecting things. So I'm going to go over to sets and I'm say create. And you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it rifle. And now with that rifle, I can turn the visibility on, turn the visibility off. And you're like, hey, but you can do that in here. But if you notice in Motion Builder, there's this little K next to things that you can animate. That means set key. So let's say he's going to put his weapon away. So he's like, I'm going to put my weapon away and do something silly. So right about here, I would come down here and I would set a key, and I move forward a frame and tick that off. And you can see that it's turned off the rifle. And it's also highlighted the K saying, hey, something's changed in this animation. Select that. And now it's turned off and he can do his thing. So now he's animating, he's turning off. So let's say you wanted to animate a character holstering his weapon. You could like bring it down. I'm gonna switch over to here because I like to show things. So say you had a character you wanted to holster your pistol, you probably like come down here and like slide it in and turn it off at the right moment as he comes up. Or you want a quick draw, you like grab, turn it on, and do that sort of thing. It's just a great way of being able to like turn things on and off. I don't use it all that often. I used to use it a lot, uh, but I don't use it all that often anymore. Mainly because I don't do a lot of that on the project I'm currently working on. So, anywho, that I want to say is like Motion Builder kind of in a nutshell for the most part of it. It's not all it does. It does a ton of things. It's a very robust, very powerful program. It's amazing at handling dense animation data, motion capture, that sort of thing. In fact, I'm going to show you how to, uh, I'm going to show you a few other things. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a few other things. So under File, you can do things like merge stuff in. Now, you have two types of ways you can actually merge into Motion Builder. You can actually just click Merge, and it acts a lot like how Max would merge something in, where it comes up with the like if you want to, you're in a Max scene. If any of you Max guys are familiar with this, you can like open up a Max scene and say, I want to merge some stuff from this other Max scene in, and it pops up a dialog. And you say, oh, here's a list of things that I want to merge in, and you can select it, and we'll only merge in those things. That's what this is. That's what this merge is. I want to merge something in to the scene, whether it's animation, curves, or objects, or both, and I want to pull it in. So I'm gonna do a couple different merges. I'm gonna show you what's going on. And I want to take note on something. So this guy, in the game industry, um, naming conventions are very important for the skeleton because all characters share the same skeleton. Which means if you change the name of a skeleton here, like you accidentally mess up the name, like rename it, or like I was saying before, merge, and it appends a 1 to the end of it, when you try to export that animation, guess what's going to happen? It ain't going to export to game. And you got to go figure out and spend 20 minutes figuring out why it's not working, then realize the problem's between the monitor and the chair, and you have to then go in and fix the problem and spend an hour fixing the problem and go re-export everything. So that's why namespaces are very important. These actually have a namespace on them. MS, you got a colon there, and then the name of the joint. So there's your namespace. You can right click on an object and you can say add remove namespace. This gives you a chance to add a namespace, replace it with something else. Click remove, cancel, and be able to handle it that way. And what else? A lot of stuff here. So yeah, so if I go in and merge something in that has the same name, it's going to screw stuff up. It won't screw up this guy. It will screw up the guy I pull in. Uh, there's another way of doing this as well. I'm going to do it. It's called a motion file import. Now, a motion file import is different because all it is doing is importing motion into your scene. So you're going to go to you're going to locate a file, motion file import. I'm going to just go grab this guy. Oh shoot, which one should I grab? I'm going to try this. Click open. It's going to say, hey, here's all your takes. This file, this FBX actually happens to have a bunch of takes in here. You can expand these things to like, sometimes names are really long. Um, I'm going to say intro, death, idle. I don't know if I want this one. I'm going to hit cancel. I don't want that one. I'm going to try a different one. Motion file, import, uh, mocap. Let's try this one. Here we go. So what's in this file? So this is just a kind of a way to like quickly look into the file and see what's in there as far as animation is concerned. Death intro 2. I think I'll do that one. So there's some very specific settings I have to set in here in order to pull this animation in. So I'm going to say merge instead of create. See, create will actually create things that I don't want it to create. I'm going to merge stuff in. And I'm going to ignore model type. I'm going to ignore and unmatched models. I'm going to ignore import degrees of freedom. I don't need that. All I need is this. And this probably confuses a lot of people. Uh, there's only two takes. Let me teach you how to read this. There's only two takes in that FBX. This M12 Outlaw Mocap FBX, whatever, this thing, Outlaw Death. Here's the name, the animation right there. And this animation right here, intro 2. This take new, this new take new, um, that's probably nothing. In fact, if I click that, everything turns off. If I click that, everything turns back on. It's just a way of quickly being able to, if you had like a bunch of stuff, turn a bunch of stuff on. Let's say you had 30 things in here, but you only needed 2 things at the bottom. Instead of going click, 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 click down the list, you'd be like, I just want to turn everything off and just that one on. And then you're only importing that one animation out of here. I can quickly see that the start frame is 0, the end frame is 480 on this take. I can see that this next one starts at frame 180 and the other one ends at 600. So I'm going to go ahead and click import. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that I don't screw something up. You're going to get this default thing says, hey, unmatched nodes and stuff. You can just click uncheck the show this again and click continue. And hi, looks like Edward Scissorhands. All right, so what does this tell me? It tells me the skeleton in the file I was trying to merge in is not the same as this file. And I am actually going to go over there. I'm going to open up that file. Let's see what's in that file. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to load that in. I'll tell you exactly why this happened. Here's the file. So this happened because I believe he is on raw mocap. Yes, here's the C3D data. Here is some assets, weapons, control rig, C3D. So there is an actor in this scene, and I should be able to switch over to it. God, it's been a long time since I've used an actor. So I'll give you a quick history of motion capture. So back in the, well, if you don't know what motion capture is, the actor has all these little markers around their body, right? And it's picked up and tracked by the cameras and recreated digitally in whatever software you're using. And and we needed a way of solving that data to a character. So what we would do is we would create an actor. Here he is. I'm having to refresh my memory. You got an actor which looks like this guy right here, and those nodes drive that actor. So we're now solving that marker data to that actor, and then that actor drives the character, and that's retargeting. So now we're retargeting from that actor to our character. I'm going to go open up that other file and see what I see. Here he is. Oh, and he got shot. Outlaw death. Yeah, let's watch that again. That was cool. Boom. Dead. Oh, or down. Here's his intro, where he like walks up and he's like talking, "Hey, little brother," or whatever his line of dialogue was in the game. "I'm gonna get you," and then you fight him. And there's a game ready idle. Uh, so yeah, because I should have been more prepared, huh? Pulling in data. It's been a long time since I've looked at all these files. I was like, I need something to show in this strip. I'm gonna pull up some old data I haven't looked at in 6 years, 7 years. I'm pulling up old data I haven't looked at in 7 years, 6 years, 7 years, 7 years. Yeah. So anyway, but yes, I screwed up. But yes, there's a motion file import would import motion onto your character, and only the motion. I'm gonna try merging in. I'm gonna show you the other way now. So I'm gonna go back to Rifters. Don't save. I'm gonna open up that original file, which I didn't save. So he's gonna be back in his default pose. There he is. Oh, that's not the guy. I could have swore it was this guy. And yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy's working. I shaded his ground gray because that white ground was kind of like a eyesore to me. All right, so I'm going to do a merge, and I'm going to go find that outlaw character that I worked with before. This one. I like this one. I'm going to say open. All right, so I got some settings in here under merge. Now I can click merge, which will literally merge anything new into the scene, and if there's a change, it will actually change things, um, reparent things, do all sorts of crazy things to it. I can say discard all elements, and then only animation is coming in. So only animation will be applied, and it'll only be applied to a character that is currently in the scene. Or I can go append. And now append will actually pull that in, and if there is a duplicate name of something like hips or whatever, it will append a 1 at the end of it if you don't put a namespace on it. If you don't already have a namespace on it, you can actually click namespace down here and apply your own namespace if you want. I'm just gonna merge things in so you can see what it's like to accidentally merge something in that may be named as something else. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and merge all that in. There he is. Getting shot. Let's move this character out of the way. Move you. Oh, full body. Move you over here. All right. So there's Outlaw Death. There he is doing his thing. Remember when I said multi-take versus normal take? I'm going to select those hips. I'm going to go down to animation layer. I'm going to set it to take option. I'm going to set it from multi to normal. Now I'm going to move him. And when I go back and forth between different animations, guess what? He stays because I've set him to normal and not multi-take. But you saw how he jumped back, right? So that's the thing. So anywho, uh, now let's say these characters are drastically different for whatever reason. Maybe one character's a girl, one character's a guy, and you got to put one of their animations on the other, which is a totally a thing in the game industry because you don't have time to, you know, create a whole new set of animations. You know, design needs it. They need it now. You've already done all the animations for the male. Why not just retarget to the female? So I'm going to retarget this guy to that guy real fast and show you kind of what that looks like. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to go to my navigator, go to my characters, go to this guy, and I'm going to, his input type right now is set to control rig. I'm going to select character. It's smart enough to automatically go, hey, there's another character in my scene. It's the outcast guy. I'm going to attach him to that guy. And you can see this Rifter dude is now moving with that guy one-to-one. It's primarily one-to-one because their skeletons are exactly the same. Speaking of which, let's go look at their skeletons. Look at this big cluster here. So I'm going to just move some of this stuff out of the way. And remember I said it appends a 1 after things? Let me show you the mess that happens when you don't take into account namespaces. So namespace MS here. It took namespace put MS1 here. It looks like I'm going to have to say I'm really impressed. Because there's a namespace, Motionbuilder 2019 is smart enough to not put a 1 after neck. Normally what it would happen was, let's say the namespace wasn't on here and you did this, it would take neck, which is right here. In fact, I'm just going to drag this over here so you can see the two necks so I can explain what would normally happen. So here's the original, right? It's neck 1. What would happen is this neck would come in as neck 2 and that would come in as neck 3. And you think that's bad. Wait until you see these fingers where they're like thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 3. This would have come in as thumb 4, thumb 5, and thumb 6 if I didn't have a namespace on there. Luckily, I do have a namespace. So the namespace took the hit. I can then go in there and I can update the namespace, fix it so they're different, and make the export process a little bit nicer. Let me get this out of the way. So here's a few pro tips. If you want to move something, I can zoom in and I can move something like this. I can select something, and let's say I'm really far out. I'm like, because I want to see everything, but I want to move that node someplace. I'd have to come in here and try to like click on it, or I can click any unbound key. In this case, Q. Q is unbound because I'm using my hotkeys. And I can click anywhere in an empty space and drag that wherever I want to go. So if I wanted to move this whole thing, and let's say I had it really far zoomed out, I can just select whatever that is, and I can just hold down an unbound key and move that wherever, which is really nice. Stop that. You can, let's see, if you hold down spacebar and right click, it will select everything in a hierarchy. So if I was over here, I'd select everything underneath that or everything in that arm. If you hold down, I want to say it's Control and click on something. Is it Control? No, it's Alt. Alt. Oh, Shift. I'm going to get this. Okay, Shift. If you hold down Shift and click something, it's going to select. Is it Shift? Is it right click? Maybe they took this feature out of 2019. I know in 2018 you can hold down these other alternate hotkeys, and what it would do is like, oh, I want whatever this is. I want to select that, but I want the parent. Oh, it worked. Control. So I held down Control. Is it right click? Oh, it's right click. So I make sure I'm doing that right. Right click, yeah. So I want to know where the top node of that joint is. I hold down control, I hit right click, and it's selected whatever the top node is. I want to say, oh, there it is. All right, so I want to select that chain from here up. I can hold down shift and right click and it will select whatever that chain is up, which is kind of cool. So spacebar, right click, anything underneath that hierarchy, uh, shift, right click, up the chain, and control, right click, just whatever the parent is. Hey, there you go. I don't use that. I don't use those other. I use the right click spacebar to select everything a lot. I don't use those others all that often, but it's kind of cool to know it's there in case you're like in this like web of stuff and you want to find whatever the parent is. Sometimes when you import stuff, it will literally look like that, and you're like, why does it look like this? By the way, you can arrange. So you can say arrange all horizontally, arrange all vertically. I prefer vertical myself. Usually, I work in a split screen, so I'll have this schematic view in one screen and the other. In fact, let me go through that. So let me switch back over here to this, so you have like a pretty picture to look at. If you hold down Control 1, that's full screen. That's what we're looking at right now. Hit Control 2, that splits into two screens. Control 3 splits into three, and Control 4 splits into four screens. And then if you ever want to like change a screen, all you have to do is click on it to activate. You can kind of see the white border going around the screen. Once you activate it, you can say, well, I want the right view and the front view and the top view, I guess, or however you want to lay it out. It's pretty nice. Or maybe I don't want the top view, I want the schematic view. So now I want the schematic view here. And because I usually work in this mode right here, uh, I'll put my schematic view over here and I'll have my working window right there. Um, you know what? Speaking of working and workflow, um, I'm going to uh, talk a little bit more about this customization. Yeah. So, like I was saying, Motionbuilder is like super customizable. You can come in here and you can actually tear all these panels off and like move them around, move them off onto another screen if you want. Uh, you can see how crazy this is going. It's because it's trying to dock this everywhere. I'm just gonna move this off to the side for a second. If you hold down Control and then try to drag something over the top of it, you can see it actually stays and doesn't try to dock. So I want to say if I hold down Control and say pull off this Navigator, you can see that it's not trying to dock anywhere. So what I'll do is I will, I didn't hold down Control. Uh, Motionbuilder. Uh, what I'll do is I'll go to my other window and I will start customizing my layout uh, and have like my tools on my right monitor. And then I'll have my main working window on the left monitor. So by the time, let's see if I can figure out how to show you all this. Let me pull some of this stuff off so you kind of get an idea. Um, pull this off. And did I get rid of my timeline? No, I still have my, there it is. So I still got this down here in my my transport controls. But yeah, this is usually how I work. And then I'm going to minimize this and start dragging some of these over on the other side. So if I was to like show you what my other monitor looked like, um, it would look something like this. I like throw my navigator there. Key controls, let's fix that. Put it right there. Layers. Uh, layers, maybe I'll put those right there. Hold on, got a couple other things over here. I grab this resources. put it like right, put this right over here. You can actually go as far as to pull these tabs out. I guess you can't pull them out from here, at least not yet. But I can show you how to pull them out. But yeah, I will lay out all my tools in a way that I think works best for me, so that I'm easily able to go back and forth between my working window and these things, which you can't see because I'm covering them up. So I'm going to just go back to layout. I'm going to click editing. It's going to get you right back to where you started. Now, by default, when you go to layout, auto update is on. I actually turned it off when I first turned this on because I was playing with a few things. But you can customize your layout. They have a few presets: editing, scripting, preview. So you click on scripting, and this is what scripting looks like. And this is if you're doing a lot of like blah 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 code. I'm not a code guy, so I couldn't tell you what to type in there. Um, you got preview. So this is like if you're just previewing animation, so you're just trying to hide everything that's unneeded. You go to preview. By the way, where is it? Or is this locked? Unlock timeline, or whatever these key controls. So I've unlocked it, which means I can now expand this. And I don't know if I can do this on my monitor. Um, oh, see, okay, I can. So when I minimize my window, and now this is going to depend on your monitor's resolution. Whenever you change your aspect ratio, don't ask me why MotionBuilder does this. Come on, MotionBuilder, give it the times. We want to have better control over this. It will change your layout. So if I grab these transport controls and undock them accidentally, there we go. Where is it? Always have to find it. There we go. So it's unlocked. So I'm gonna I'm gonna expand this to a point where the aspect ratio of your main working window changes. You can see it actually flips your viewport around. But you know, who wants to work with a a timeline that looks like that, right? But I mean, if you're working off, let's say, I would really love to be able to work off of a three-plane screen. Oh, they changed it. Oh no, it used to like when you do this, it would like it would rearrange these so you'd get the double panes on the left side and a big solid pane on the right side. Now it's just a pane, period. Motion Builder 2019. So anyway, I would love to be able to have my two small windows here on the left and one big window here on the right. Please, Autodesk, if you ever listen to this, please make this so we can update this. Let's go back to my favorite view. This is my favorite view because I do a lot of my selecting right here. While I do have, let me go back over to my editing layout and select my character. While I do have this window, and by the way, you can notice this has changed. It's changed because he's currently being retargeted by that guy I pulled in here. What was I going to? Totally lost track of what I was talking about. But yeah, you can come over here and instead of selecting something, oh yeah, selection. So instead of selecting here, like I can go over to my fingers and select my fingers and stuff by clicking on these little tabs or these feet. I can select here. I'll just go right in here and I'll just select them right here off the control rig. Say I want to animate that finger. This happens to be the outcast finger. So if I zoom into that finger, I hit F to zoom in on that. I probably can move that finger. Well, let me select it upper digit. No, I can't move them around. Why is that? Story, maybe? No. Well, I have no idea why I can't move it. I have to debug that. Probably because I need to reset MotionBuilder after changing all those preference settings, if I was to guess. MotionBuilder, while as powerful it is, hold on a sec. MotionBuilder, as powerful as it is, it's a beast when it comes to memory. And if you ever find weird things happening, it means MotionBuilder's like it's tired and you need to save and quit and reopen Motionbuilder, and it 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, it completely fixes whatever the problem is. So whenever you're working and you're like, why are things not working? That's why. Just save, quit, close, reboot your computer if you have to, and start it back up again. Let's see. What is retargeting? Sorry, I haven't been really looking at the chat, but I will see if I can answer a couple of these questions here for you. Retargeting. So when you do animation on a character, it's on that character, right? And now I've got this other character, and I want to put animation onto that character. Let's say that character is completely different. Let's say that character is completely different proportions of joints and legs and stuff like that. And in fact, you know what? I will show you what I'm talking about because Motionbuilder actually has some really creepy looking characters that we can play with. So I want to say it is under tutorials. Yeah, it's here. So if you ever want like a free character to work with, uh, they got some stuff in here for free. So Mia rigged. I'll pull her into the scene. Notice how I'm just dragging and dropping. Drag, merge, merge all ticks. And there's Mia. Look how big she is. And you can see it came in with take one because that happened to have a take in it. And I didn't go through the normal merge options. I just did the drag and drop merge. So I didn't really have any control over what came into my scene. So I'm going to go back over to my death. So there's my guy getting killed. He's dead. So what I want to do is I want to make her do the same thing. Now she's completely different size. She's different proportions. I'm going to head over to her character, which is right down here. Now you can see her here, Mia. It looks like they've actually put a few things on her. So what do they got on her? They've got some auxiliary pivots, it looks like, placed onto her. So I'm going to take her and I'm going to retarget her to that guy. So all I have to do is come over in the Mia controls, and I'm going to go from her control rig, which she came in with, to character. And it's going to automatically, believe it or not, be driven by my very first character that I pulled in. Why? Because he's the very first character that was in the scene, which is the Rifter guy. So the Outlaw is driving the Rifter, who is driving Mia. that's what's happening right now. You can see she's now doing everything that he's doing, even though she's a completely different scale. There are a lot of settings in the retargeting that you do, and I will definitely be going over tutorials on proper retargeting in the future, but to just kind of give you like an overview. Yeah, see if I can zoom out and make this full screen and give you an idea. First of all, Mia has a 2016 character solver on her. That's where all these blue things are. I do not like the Hicks rig 2016 solver, so I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to delete that. Right click and say delete, confirm. Now she's back to the regular stock MB character settings. I prefer the character settings. So there's things like finger solving, like my guy has fingers, she has fingers. He's been characterized, which is the process of kind of putting a skeleton in a control, or sorry, not a skeleton. It's the process of putting a control rig onto the skeleton so that you have ways to control it. And because they're the same. It does because the way Motionbuilder works, it's not like I build it for him, I build it for her. They're custom to that character. They are fundamentally the same rig, so that when I retarget, if his fingers work, her fingers work. As long as I have finger solving turn on, you can see her hands are actually trying to work the best that they can. So I can turn on like shoulder solving. I don't know if you'll see much in her shoulders. Let me go to a frame where her hands are up in the air. right there. So right now she has pretty low shoulder, realistic shoulder solving. So if I play with that value, you can see it's actually playing with her shoulders. So, these are things that you play with, and every character is different. Every character is characterized a little bit different um, when you're working with vastly different things. Like she has been characterized different than the characters that I've been working with, for example. Um, but yeah, you have other things like you can work on, where is it? Retargeting, you can match source. By matching source, this is going to try, even though she's super tall, it's like Attack of the 50-foot woman, right? I'm going to turn on match source, and it's going to do its best to try to make her match him. You can see it's actually pulled her feet in to more closely match him. Let me go to that walking one. It might be a little bit easier to see what's going on. So with match source, you can see it's really trying to get her to match what he's doing. If I click that off, she's now animating to her scale. And because he ends on 0 and she, and they're set up at 0, she's kind of animating to him. So when you have a large scale difference between two characters and they start going off in a direction somewhere, the farther they get away from 0, the farther they get away from each other, which is why she's so far back, but why she kind of catches up as she gets here. And then there's like other controls, like she has kind of like the squat legs right here. So, you can play with the hips. You can like adjust the hips to kind of get this a little bit nicer. Um, just all sorts of settings in here. I'm going to definitely be touching on probably my next tutorial when I do like character setup uh, and motion file import, real motion file importing where I actually get files prepped. So I don't know. I hope that answers the retargeting question um, of retargeting. I feel like I've gone over a lot. I feel like I've been at this for however long now, and there's still so much inside this package. Um, just things like saving out selections and scene sets, and motion file importing, motion file exporting. You can put video planes in the background and have reference video playing in the background that you can, set up. Um, they have this new thing here, open reality shelf. It looks like, oh, look, you can dock it. It looks like that's the same stuff as what's down here. So devices. So if I go down to templates, devices, you can see that they got a shelf now that is the same thing as that. So constraints, there's all my constraints. If I hop over here to constraints, you can see it's the same. All the constraints, primitives. Oh, that's nice. I like how the primitives are here. Elements, filters, or no, I'm sorry, files, elements. Um, that's kind of cool. Python tools, if you want a Python tool manager, you can open that up and you can dock it apparently. Hold down control, drag it, you can undock it. You can also go through the, where is it? Windows. If you ever want a window, you can always say, where is my, let's say you close your Navigator. Oh, silly motion builder. Let's close that down. All right, so hey, what happened to my Navigator? You can just come down here and just go find your Navigator, add Navigator. Boom, there's your Navigator, default. I was saying before, excuse me, you can customize your layout. I'm going to do a mini custom layout here. So it's going to look silly. But I'm going to put that there. I'm going to take this. I'm going to put this here. I'm going to drag this down here because I don't want that to be there. I'm going to drag this over here because I don't want that in my way. In fact, I think I'm going to pull up that whole character tool. I'm going to do a mini version of what I normally set up. So I'll put that right there. So I'm going to go over to my settings, and I'm going to go, or sorry, not settings. I'm going to go to my layout. I'm going to say create custom, and you can name it whatever you want. Your name, awesome layout. Put your name there. So now when I go to layouts, I can see it's here, layout. So now if I go to, let's say I drop back into editing, and I want to get to that layout, I can come here and I can be like, my awesome layout. And I can see it has a little bit of problem with window size. I'd have to like play with it a little bit to see what works best. But let me show you where that saves that. So like I was saying, Motion Builder is like super customizable. You can hotkeys, you can customize your hotkeys, what hotkeys you want. You can customize layout. You can customize these tabs. You can customize the names. You can change this from resource to something else, or Navigator. Navigator's disappeared again on me. So let me show you where that's at. Again, direct folders, which I talked about a long time ago. I've actually got this kind of, I think I have this bookmarked. MB. So if you go to My Documents, there's an MB folder, which is for Motion Builder. You go into the version that you're using, config, you go to layouts, and there's the layout that I just created. This is a text document. You open up that text document, pull this over here, and you can just find what window's what, and you can actually start customizing and saying like, what is this, resources? Maybe I don't need everything under resources, so I'm gonna go find the resources tab, tools, tabs, pose, bottom. I always have to reread these things every time. Asset browser, groups, sets. So here is, that's the current tool, tabs, pose. So I can see that this has 4 tabs in here. Sets, groups, asset browser, filters, properties, controls. That is what that resources is. And it is called right here, right there, Windows Resources. There, I knew it was there. You can call it whatever you can call it, my awesome resources or whatever is helpful for you. You can change the tabs from whatever current tab for. You can say what tab do you want to open up on. So if say I wanted to open up on tab 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's asset browser. It would open up on 4. You would say you can delete things that you don't use, like maybe, or you can pull things out and create your own window and add it to the bottom here. And you can just completely like get into this text document and configure things however you want, save it, and when you reload Motion Builder, it will load that new one. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to update my current layout. I'm going to update that, and I'm going to exit out of Motion Builder. Ah, look, Python editor's back here. No wonder I couldn't open it up. Don't save. Don't save. Now it saved all those preferences I did at the very, very, very beginning of this kind of tutorial. So when I open it up, anything that wasn't in effect when I created, when I set those preferences, have now been like, set. So, and you can see that because I was on the awesome layout setting. I should call it the not so awesome layout setting. It's opened up with what that is. And if I wanted to update on the fly, I can click on the auto update, and as I move these things around, if I go back to, it should update it automatically. So if I go to editing and then back to it, it should be, yeah, you can see it's updated all those windows into the wherever it is that you moved them. So rename current layout. Yeah, you can rename your current layout. You're just getting in here and playing. I'm a big believer of like playing and experimenting and fooling around with stuff and just seeing what things do. So I'll cancel that. And I'm going to go back to my regular layout. So So, anyways, I'm gonna. There's still more stuff. There's a lot more stuff to get into. I mean, this is really just here's Motion Builder and here's a bunch of panels and buttons you can click on and what they do. I want to get into actually editing. I want to show you guys how to set up a character, put in lighting, shadows, put on normal maps, uh, so that you can get bump map textures. Um, some animators don't care about the way their characters look. They just animate with a flat gray shaded model or a proxy model. Um, they're used to it and they like it and they don't mind it. Personally, I like to have textures. And I'll tell you why. One of the reasons I really like textures is fingers. You can, with textures, you can see where the fingernail is, which means you know which way the finger bends. And if you know which way the finger bends, you're not bending in the wrong direction. And when you're working with a game character, uh, and when you're working with a game character, they're not going to have it. It's really simple geo, so you're not going to have like really nice fingernails modeled into the character. You're just not going to have it. So having textures or normals or something on it that allows you to figure out which way the knees are pointing or which way the elbows are twisting, I think it really helps personally. But anyway, so if anybody has any questions, I don't even know if anybody's watching. Is anybody watching this? I got 8 people watching this. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them out there. I'll see if I can answer them. And if I'm like getting down like this, it's because I've got old man eyes and I've got to really try to read what this chat is. Ted, by the way, I'm gonna completely butcher people's names because that's me. Uh, Ted Grinrin. I'm totally I'm totally butchering it. I apologize. Gur Gur Gra. Waves to you. The pink werewolf says, "What is that dog behind me?" That dog is Lupin. And right over there, book, that's Luna. 50 points to who can guess where their names came from. They're both, believe it or not, from the same litter. They're brother sister. They're Chihuahua Papillon Dotson mix. Little yappy dogs when they want to be. Although they're really good right now. They're like, hey, we're happy. We're inside the house and we get to sleep here while you yap online. Well, I am happy that your brain is swelling from so much. I'm going to call you TG. TG. I really there's just so much to this, and I really want to help you guys learn this stuff because it's fun. Sailor Moon, not Sailor Moon, but close, right? Because Luna's the cat in Sailor Moon, right? So Luna and Lupin. Oh, they looked at me. Hey guys, come here. They're such little lap dogs. Come here, Luna. She is. Come here, Luna. She's just a little attention hog. She's a little Velcro dog. Oh, little puppy dog. All right, go on. Um, Green Ranger. Well, all right. So time's up. I'll tell you what they're from. They're from Harry Potter. Luna Lovegood and Professor Lupin. Although I should have called him Dobby because he's more like a good house elf. Isn't that right, Lupin? Oh, I'm a good house elf. I keep threatening my girlfriend and my kid. I'm changing his name to Dobby. What is retargeting and why is it important? All right, there's a multitude of reasons why retargeting is important. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but when you are shooting motion capture and you've got all this data, you need to be able to get that data onto your character. So what you do is you solve all this point cloud data onto a skeleton, or I showed you an actor because I had some really old data. Uh, but nowadays with the new technology, you solve it onto a skeleton, which is a mocap skeleton, usually generated by the program that you're working in. That skeleton gets characterized, and now you have to be able to get. And by the way, those skeletons do not match your game character or your cinematics characters usually, almost always. So you need to get that onto your character. So you build a control rig and character, or not a controller, but you characterize the mocap skeleton, which says it's basically telling the computer saying, or you're saying, this is a shoulder, this is an arm, or upper arm, this is a lower arm, this is a head, this is a neck, so on and so forth. And then it uses code or algorithm to say you are driving this character, which is your game character or your cinematic character or whatever, and your game character is characterized as well, right? So it knows where the head and the neck and the torso are, and because it knows what these body parts are, it's the mocap is able to drive that character. So that's one very important uh, aspect of retargeting, is being able to get your motion capture data onto your game character, your cinematic movie character. Another very important, and this happens more than anybody probably realize. It happened to me when I was working on Duke Nukem Forever. It happened to me when I was at Lightbox a little bit, but not so much because I was the only animator on the project. But man, oh man, on the game I'm currently working on, wow, we retarget all the time. Because let's say um, they decide they need to update the skeleton for some reason, which we've gone through 7 versions of our skeleton. That means we had to retarget all of our animations 7 times because joints change. Sometimes if you know about rigging, you'll point the joint down X, right? And some, but maybe they decide in code we don't want it to point down X. Maybe we want it to point down Y, which kind of happened to us at one point. We had it pointing in a direction that we thought would work best in the game, and it turned out not to be the case. So even though we had done a ton of animations, that means we now have to retarget all those animations onto a better skeleton. Um, in order to get a female functioning in our game, the first step, uh, we because Mel came first, we usually develop everything on him, and then with some exceptions, but we develop a whole set of animations onto him. And once those are working and design has hooked it up and code is good and he's functioning in game, a really quick way to get the female in game is to take all those animations and retarget onto her, right? So now we've retargeted all those animations onto the female and stick her into the game. Now she's functioning and she can do absolutely everything that the male can do. And then as we get time, we go and we shoot female performance capture or motion capture or whatever it is that we're shooting. And then because we've already done all the research and development on the male, we're able to take that female and we're able to start dropping, uh, properly shot female motion onto her and export that to game, and wait for our next release because you're gonna we've promised female, and when you start doing emotes in our game, you're gonna see a difference now between male and female when they do the emotes, because we were able to just we were able to retarget, make her work, and then replace her animations. Sometimes it's not worth shooting new animations for a female. Um, and what I mean by that is something like a reload, like you're shooting and you got to reload, bam. You know, our girls are as cool and as badass as our guys are, right? Shooting and reloading, and there's no need to take that animation and make it like feminine, 'cause she's strong. She's a strong woman. Boom, get in there and fight. So we'll retarget animations like that, things that don't add anything to the game by having to go out and spend a lot of time and money capturing and editing and sticking in. So we'll retarget from the male to the female. Now, you're asking, why do you have two skeletons in the game? Is that why you're retargeting? Yes, we have two skeletons in the game. We have a female skeleton, which has different height and proportions than the male. So that means she requires her own animation set. Thus, we have to retarget to get her functioning before we replace those animations. Yes, Professor Lupin. Although I kid you not, he's Dobby the house elf. He just cried for me. See, I assume that's not that easy. Well, because yes, it can be very challenging. Hey, Lupin, come here, boy. Come here, Lupin. Not you, Luna. I didn't call you. Velcro dog. Come here. Come here. People want to see the dog. Who wants to look at me? They want to look at the dog. I'm telling you, this is not Lupin. This is Dobby. I'm a good house elf. Dobby's a good house elf. Dobby loves Harry Potter. There you go. It's my Dobby impression. So let's see. Since the characters have to do certain things related to their body size, like fitting into a seat, what sort of challenges have you run into? Oh, that's a good one. Although I'm probably starting to touch on Star Citizen, but I let me do this in general terms. So it absolutely doesn't matter if it's a cockpit or a vehicle of some sort, or in a movie or a game, probably a game. Let's say it's a virtual reality game. Um, if you have two characters that are different heights and you're able to go in first person perspective, well, the camera's right here in the head, right, for him, and it's right in there in the head for her, but she's this much shorter. Line of sight is extremely important. So things like spaceships, where you have to be able to see over the console, are extremely important. So as a character's like climbing into a cockpit, her head will we need to get her head to match. When I go over retargeting and stuff like that, I can show things like how to, when characters are really close to size, like our characters, how to get their head to like pull into place so that her line of sight is exactly what his line of sight is. There are some gives and takes, like now all of a sudden her butt's floating above the seat a little bit, but you'll never see it, right? So there's like you have to pick your battles. Uh, Things like arm lengths, like for example, weapons. Weapons is a great one. I wish I had a prop weapon here. So if he's holding a weapon and he's like this, because this is where the hand grip is, when she tries to hold a weapon, her arm will be out like this, or probably like this, because the gun is so much bigger in relations to her. So it's trying to find that fine balance. This is why metrics in video games, this is kind of getting off the motion builder subject and talking about video games. This is why metrics are so important in video games. It's important to establish size and scale. And when you establish a size and scale for, in a case of a game that has multiple sized characters, uh, you have to make sure that that object that can be used by all those characters are uh, they can be used across the board. So what you do is you take the gun, which would be like this on her, and you pull it in. So she, and the grip and the stock and everything. So now she feels good. Now when he holds it probably a little more like this. So he's a little more tucked in. And this is a lot nicer than her if she was out like this. So those are some of the challenges. It's just reaching for things and grabbing things and seeing over things and um, sitting down in a chair, just a chair or a couch. Like something that he can sit on where he looks normal, her feet would be like hanging off like a little kid. So we have to like think about that and pull that down and say, this is what our metric is, and you're going to sit on it, and it's going to work, whether you're a tall character or a short character. Do I clip edits? Uh, see, how do you prevent common issues like people clipping through their weapons, clothing, or vice versa? uh, so typically in a game, I'm going to use, let's see, Uncharted or Tomb Raider or Gears of War or something. You see how old school I am. I'm not even saying any new titles. But let's say you're doing a game like that where you have a lead protagonist character who they've gone in and they said, this is what our character looks like. This is their scale and their proportions. These are their outfits. And when you do your animations, you build your animations based off of that character. When you're working on an MMO where you can wear multiple different outfits, uh, it's a give and take. You just kind of have to play to the lowest common denominator and say what's acceptable. Hands hovering or hands not hovering? Do you mind if the hands clip a little bit into the jackets when the arms are the side, or do you mind if they hover a little bit excessively? There is tech that can be implemented that adjust that, but it really depends on the game and where you want to focus your time and energy. So, but yeah, any other questions? It is getting kind of late, and I know I have to go to work in the morning. Don't know about you guys. How do you get consistent data when working with actors of different sizes? So that's a great question because that is an ongoing challenge. When we're on a motion capture set and we're building a prop or a set for an actor, and let's say we're shooting both male and female, typically women tend to be shorter than men, uh, but our game characters are a specific height and things are scaled to be specifically a specific height to our metrics. So what you do is you counter that with the props that you build and the set pieces that you build. Um, so for example, if you really, really want to put a lot of effort into something that's really important because your actor is much shorter than your game character, let's say by 20%, you go to your set and you scale everything down by 20%. And then when you do a retarget job to retarget from the motion capture onto the game character, uh, it's like everything gets scaled back up to the size of your game character by that 20%. Because typically when you deal with motion capture, you're either scaling your game character up to meet the motion capture, or you're scaling your motion capture down to meet the game character, or vice versa, depending on which one's bigger. My opinion is you you scale the motion capture down to whatever scale your game character is. So that allows hands to line up with grips and handholds and all sorts of other bits and bobs that you the actor has to interact with. Um, there are a lot of tricks and techniques for dealing with props, for example. So and I'm definitely going to do this in another tutorial, but let's say you have a prop. I've got a prop right here. Here's my Master Chief prop, right? So let's say, okay, dogs don't like the prop. Here's my prop. It's a roll of tape. So Hush, dogs. So I'm going to marker this roll of tape, and I'm going to track this roll of tape in motion capture in when we do a mocap shoot the way that that we would a character, right? It's going to be like floating data in space. I'm going to take that floating data and I'm going to create a rig to that floating data because when the actor's on stage and he's holding the gun or he's got to carry the thing and he's like lifting it up, it doesn't matter if his arms are a little bit longer or a little bit shorter than the game character because this prop is exactly where the actor was holding it in space. So I'm going to constrain my hand to that prop. And I'm now going to let that captured prop drive my arm. And if I switch to the other hand, it's now driving the other hand, and I'll just turn off the constraints and allow natural motion to like go back through that arm. So I don't know. I hope that helps a little bit. Let's see. Let's see. What would be a good starter resource? Uh, well, I'm hoping this is a good starter resource to kind of like learn some of this stuff. Uh, Motionbuilder is expensive. Uh, you can find motion capture online. I guess I should post some links somewhere. I haven't really thought about that. Uh, but you can do searches and just buy stock motion capture. House of Moves. I've done work with House of Moves in the past on the last game I worked on, and I believe you can buy stock. They have so much motion capture. They shot for so many projects over the years. I believe they put together a database where you can find what you want and you can buy it. And who knows? It could have been a celebrity that did that motion capture. Um, you can buy. There's auto rigging tools online. Again, I apologize. I guess I should have had a list of things to start out in. But you can get a character, find a character off TurboSquid, take it to another website that will auto rig it for you. Get it delivered in an FBX format, so then you can put it in a motion builder. Go grab stock motion capture mocap and start working with it. See, thanks for your time on this. Awesome to see the process. Well, you're welcome. I'm excited. Somebody's excited about it. I really didn't know I was going to have a whole 9 people here, so that's uh that's good. Let's see. Uh, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. This is the nerdiest, coolest thing that you've ever seen. Wait until I start doing some of my other streams. I'd like to sculpt. So I think I might be like sculpting some stuff uh, just live. I'm not as good as some of those other sculptors that you see on Twitch or YouTube or wherever, but yeah, I like to do it. Subscribe. I'm working on a subscription. Apparently, I'm so new that I'm not a partner or associate or whatever it is with Twitch. And if I do like 2 or 3 streams where I have more than 2 people watching, I can all of a sudden start subscribing or set up the whole subscription thing and subscribe. So um, I'm working on it. If you guys tuning in and watching my stuff, it'll help me get to that point where you can subscribe. Well, I'm glad I boggled your mind, and I'm glad you're interested. See, I have looked everywhere and there's basically nothing for people looking to get experience with mocap. Either have experience or you don't. What advice do you have for a newbie wanting to learn how this works? There are places you can go to learn motion capture. Dave's school has some motion capture. There are a few online resources where they have classes in motion capture. I have looked into those personally. I don't care for them so much. Not that they're bad at what they do. It's just the way I handle motion capture is different than the way they teach motion capture. There are 2 camps, right? Or three camps. There's 3 camps. You have purists. You have purist hand key animators. You have purist motion capture guys. The purist hand key animators are like, I never want to motion capture anything. Motion capture is the devil's rotoscope. Yeah. Boo. And then you have the other side of the spectrum, the mocap guys. They're like, uh, freaking hand key. Who wants to touch a hand key? If it's not shot right once, you go back and you shoot it again until it's right and it works flawlessly on your character. Blah, 1-to-1. Uh, and then you have the guys in the middle who are like me, who are like, you know what? Motion capture is a great tool. It gets you a lot of really high quality animations really fast. But you know what? Sometimes you got to strip animation off of something and fix it. Um, the Andy Serkis, he really insulted a bunch of animators when he called us digital makeup artists because his performance is so flawless with Gollum and whatever. And then he got smacked down when an animator goes, "Oh yeah, boop, here's what you look like before we got a hold of it." And it's night and day. The quality that was shot, the raw mocap versus what the animators delivered for the final film, night and day. And it took being able to do motion editing, it took being able to hand key animation. You need to know the principles of animation, squash, stretch, framing, ins and outs, ins out, arcs, curves. You need to know all that in order to be a good motion editor. In fact, some of the best motion editors I know started off as hand key guys. I'm not saying that you can't just be a mocap guy and not be good, but understanding the principle of animation is key. Knowing how curves flow into each other can determine whether or not an animation looks good or it doesn't look good. Does it look janky and rough? Hold on. Hey, stop arguing with each other. Leave his bone alone. Arguing over the chew toy. It's like, leave my chew toy alone. I was totally distracted there. Oh, yeah, getting into the learning things. 3D Buzz is a great website. It's a place that I went to way back in the day to kind of like learn some software. At least they had really good Motion Builder tutorials, but we're talking Motion Builder 2009, or I think it's before 2009. It's like really old. They're really old last time I checked. Um, there are a few other resources you can go online and kind of like see how it works and what have you. There's a few YouTube channels you can do searches for Motion Builder, but there's never really been anything like super in depth. When I got into the industry, I learned on the job. I kid you not. North Texas University, at least back when I worked at 3D Realms, this is back in '06, '07. I'm sorry, '06, '07, '08. Yeah, in '09. That time they had a motion capture lab and they had a Vicon system and they would teach Motion Builder, and some of those guys actually went to Modus Digital up in Dallas, um, and so you could get a degree in motion capture from there, or maybe I can teach you a little bit of something here and there. I'd be happy to, like, if you got something, post it somewhere and I'll check it out and give some feedback and some critiques, constructive criticism, if I can. See, we got a Dorito chip and a bunch of guys going, oh, this is like learning harpsichord from young Mozart. Thank you for this. Please do more of this. I plan on it. My goal, because I want to be like front facing with you guys, my goal is to not just educate you. I would eventually like to get to a point where I have enough content to justify people going, hey, I don't mind paying you a couple of bucks to learn some of these tutorials, and that money would be, would help to like buy better cameras. Like right now I'm using an old camera. I've actually ordered a new camera. It'll be in tomorrow. I was like, it's getting Amazon. Where's my next day delivery? um, but yeah, I want to get a microphone. I'm using my headset right now. I love this headset, by the way. It's like HyperX headset. It's like one of the best headsets I've ever used. I love the microphone on it. I got one of these at work, and because we we used to Skype call all the time. Now we're on Microsoft Teams. Use it all the time in Teams. I love this thing. It just works great. I literally sit next to a whole bunch of other animators and guys in meetings all day long. Designers sit like back behind me, and it really does a good job of canceling out all that excess noise. But it'd be cool to have like a really nice microphone like you see in some vloggers and what they use. That'd be cool. Oh yeah, those are nice. What's really funny is I can always tell who doesn't have a good headset at work because when I talk, I can hear my voice through their microphone into my ears, even though they're like way far away. But one of the guys I work with, David Pang, who's like a really good senior animator who sits like right next to me, has the same set that I do. Can't hear myself through his microphone at all. He sits like right next to me. All right. So, you guys, any more questions? You got any more curiosity about motion capture or motion builder? I can always go back and recover something that we had just talked about. What do I think about timing? Um, I'm going to assume you mean timing of an animation, like it being too slow or too fast. Yes? No? So human motion. I hope I'm answering this correctly. Yeah, okay, good. So human motion typically is slow, right? So it doesn't seem slow. You're looking at me right now on this video, or you look at somebody in the room next to you and you watch a movie, it looks normal. But when you take that motion and you stick it into a video game, it just looks slow. Oh my God. You do an animation of a guy like getting shot, and it looks like he's in slow motion. He's falling down, he's hitting the ground, he's like, whatever. But it's literally the same speed as if you were to do it in reality. So what we do is we go in and we do a time. Again, there's five different ways to do the same thing in Motion Builder, like I said earlier, right? So what we'll do is we'll either compress the time or a time warp or something where we take that time, we story it, like the story I was showing you. Story, you can actually like squash and stretch time of things in story. Um, we'll take that and we'll start speeding it up, and we'll speed it up, and we sit there and we watch it, and we try to get it to a point where it's not so fast that it looks like Benny Hill, like running around, whatever. But we want it at a speed that is that works in game. So when we feel you eventually develop an eye for it, right? So you go into game, you play your animation, and if it feels good, you go with it. The caveat to that, though, is performance capture, right? So we deal with a lot of performance capture where I work. And in the movies, they do a lot of performance capture, right? Performance capture, if you don't know what it is, you're capturing the full performance of the character or the actor, right? So motion capture, I'm just capturing the motion of the body or the object, right? Performance capture, I'm capturing the face. I've got a face cam. I've got a mic. It's like recording everything I say. Everything is time synced so that the body and the face and the audio all line up one to one. Uncharted did an amazing job, and I don't know if they were the first company to use full performance capture in their cinematics, but they did a darn good job of it. And the cinematics looked amazing. You can really tell the difference between when the dialogue and the body animation is in sync or it's not. Um, those are the challenge. That is what's difficult. That is what I don't know how to solve that for you. I don't know how to take that and speed that up because you're really tied to the audio and you can't speed audio up or you sound like a chipmunk or your face is like all over the place. Um, but if you can solve the make the body feel game uh, fast or game normal, game normal. That's a new word. I coined it. Game normal. If you can make the body feel game normal, but still keep the face in the mouth, I think you're doing really well. But again, it's like timing is everything. Head bobs, cadence, gestures. I'm doing a lot of gestures right here. Uh, we just do gestures naturally, and it's just kind of keeping that timing and everything. See, timing is your. What do you think about time? See, do you work from home or is this your office? No, this is my home office. You guys want a small little tour of my office? I could pick up the webcam and like angle it around. But yeah, so I've got my girlfriend makes fun of this. I've got my desk here, which is where I work. Woo, super blurry. All right, right. There's my computer desk. I've been using a mouse tonight, but believe it or not, I actually use a Wacom tablet to animate. I'll tell you why in a bit. And then I got my little Master Chief, and I have my sculpting side where I like to do all my little sculptures. And if I'm making you seasick, this is what it's like to look through a character's head in our game before we do a head cam pass to make things not feel so sick. And then I got, books and dogs and close my door and a chair that people like to sit in sometimes. And there we go. So yeah, it's my home office. I love uh, the company I work for because they're extremely friendly with when I need to work from home. I can work from home. I can remote into my computer from here. So I got to pick the kid up from school because he's sick or something. Most game studios don't do that. They don't allow you to do that, but that's kind of like the benefit of the company I work with because we're global and we have to communicate with everybody and we're constantly sending data back and forth and everything. Um, that's just what we do. Let's see. Let's see. I wish I knew more about animation to actually contribute to something. LOL. Uh, if you enjoy it, dude, that's awesome. Uh, honestly, I mean, people watch people play video games all the time, right? Um, and it's no different than somebody watching a football team, in my opinion. I'm not playing football, but I'm watching the football team. And I watch people paint and do all sorts of other sculpting, and I love watching these guys build these like crafty little houses. I don't know, I've never done it. I don't know, I don't even know where to start, but I love watching it. So that's cool. Same like me looking at any art. I don't know how much, but I know what I really like. Really cool of me. Uh, really cool for me as it's not anything close to my work. Ah, that's cool. Yeah, if you guys have work, I would love to see you guys' work. Uh, see, dual screens for life. I think this is cool. At work, I got 3 screens. I'm actually saying I really wish I had a third screen for here now. I remember when I went, this is back during the old CRT days of the big monitors that weigh 500 pounds. I remember like working on one and then I got one, a second one. I was like, oh, this one's great. I love this. This is a cool. I love having dual monitors. And I couldn't go back to a single monitor. Now I'm at my current job. I'm like, I've got 3 monitors. I'm like, oh, I wish I had a third monitor here because I I could do so much more. See. See. Hello, Hellcat5 Gaming. Good to meet you. How do I feel about motion capture versus hand animating? Do you feel it cheapens the final product or produces a more fluid animation? That is a great question. Uh, my answer is it depends. What style are you going for? I would never want to see a Lego game motion captured. And there's a story behind that. I'll tell you in a second. Uh, it doesn't fit. It doesn't look good. Motion capture does not look good in a Lego game. Uh, and I wouldn't hand key a game that needs to be stylized in a realistic way. And I've got another story for that. I'll tell you here in a sec. But hitting back on the Lego game, so some of our guys that work with us came from Lego, and they were telling me they were wanting to do motion capture at one point and see what it looked like on the Lego characters. But they had a problem where Lego uh, they spent weeks. They spent weeks trying to get motion capture to work on their Lego character in Maya. I said, "Oh, really? Do you have that character?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I got it. Here, I can pull it up." So he pulls it up, and I kid you not, within they spent 2 weeks. I spent like 15 minutes, pulled it into Motion Builder, characterized it, grabbed some of our mocap, retargeted it right to that Lego character, and it was working flawlessly. Did it look good? No. It was good that they did not go with motion capture for the Lego games. It needs to be hand keyed. And same goes for the game Rage. I worked on Rage, and if you ever play Rage, Rage is a beautiful game. But you have this very realistic combat that you go into, and you have this very realistic things in the game. But then you go talk to a mission giver, a storyteller like the mayor, or the crazy old coot that lives out by himself. He's like, "I'm crazy guy." It's all hand keyed stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, the animation is great. The hand keyed animation is great. The guys that animated that came from DreamWorks and some other really high end places. But to me, those two styles just did not mesh well together and did not look good together. And at that point, in my opinion, you need to make a call. Do you go hand key and have it this very stylized style where everything, has, looks like this, like it's hand keyed and nice? Or do you go motion capture and make everything look realistic? Um, so yeah, and in my case, my idea is Rage. Rage is kind of a little more realistic, so I would go motion capture. I would not have hand keyed all those cinematic characters. Let's see. I know about rigging. I know about rigging, weighting, etc. Cool. That's good. Cool. Thank you for the follow, Hellcat5. Let's see. It was neat. It's neat how entertainment has blow up. What kind of content we have nowadays? Yes, it is. What are some of the challenges you face animating in different gravity scenarios? Man, there was talk about renting that zero G jet that you can, that goes up and down, and we were going to mount motion capture cameras around it and see about capturing actual, white weightless or the microgravity. Uh, it just never happened, but it was like for whatever reason. But man, that would have been cool to do that. I don't think our cameras would have fit that space inside that fuselage of the plane. We'd have had to get different cameras. Our cameras are meant for a very big area, but man, that would be cool. So some of the challenges is like if you've never done it, I mean, you have to look at a lot of like reference footage from astronauts from NASA. You have to kind of see how things move, and you kind of have to like figure out how to tackle a problem like that. Is hand keying better? Like to refer to that question earlier, maybe it is for in those scenarios. If that's the case, then you have to match the style of motion capture. Um, or you can do wire work and hook your characters up onto wire. I believe Sandra Bullock did that in what was that movie? Gravity? Was it Gravity? Am I getting that wrong? I could be getting that wrong. Where she's in space and she's doing all of her stuff, and it was amazing. They did an amazing job with wires and what have you. So yeah, unless we can actually get up into space, I don't know how to solve that without using imagination. Let's see here. See if I can pull off my little chat window so I can see this a little bit better. Let's see, I'm losing some of these. You guys are typing too fast for me. Let's see. Animating different gravity scenes. Okay, here we go. See, how long have I been involved in animation? Well, I was a sophomore in high school back in good old 1990. No, junior in high school in good old 1993. And I saw a video called Behind a Mind's Eye, and I go, which is a bunch of shorts, video, like an anthology of a bunch of short animations from different studios. You get a Blockbuster. So it tells you how old I am. I looked at it, I go, I want to do that. And so after I graduated high school, I went and started looking for schools that teach 3D animation. And back in the late 90s, the only place around me was a school called uh, Collin County Community College. Not even any of the big universities had anything 3D related. So I went in there and they had a Maya lab and I learned uh, Cinema 4D, and I started my path of animation there. And it has slowly, because I do a lot of things, I like to sculpt, I like to draw, I like to do all sorts of things. It slowly led me to where I'm at today, where back in the console, uh, when we were going to next gen, which the next gen consoles were Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, there became a divide in the game industry. And what I mean by divide is things became so specialized in development with normal maps and programs like ZBrush, which are very complex. And then you have other software for animation, motion capture, things that are very specialized there that you can no longer be a generalist because I was kind of a generalist, did a little bit of everything. And my path kind of took me because decided to get a job at 3D Realms working on Duke Nukem Forever because I was like, hey, Duke Nukem Forever, cool. Uh, and it took me into the path of set my path into animation because I just didn't have time to do everything. I'd love to learn ZBrush. It's just time, right? Time and energy. You got a lot of stuff to do. Um, See, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed Rage. That's cool. The guys that worked on it did really, really well. I worked on it for 3 months. I had a 3-month contract with id. At the time, I was 3D Realms had just shut down. Duke Nukem, go figure. Yeah, I'm sure you all remember that whole debacle. So I went to id was really great. Pulled a bunch of us on because it needed the help, and they were working on Rage and a few other things. Uh, pulled a couple of us animators over there and worked for there for 3 months. I did all the authority figures. I believe they're called the authority. It's the super soldiers that you come across. Like there might have been a couple animations that got added after I left. But yeah, Rage was a cool game. Yeah, John Goodman was good, wasn't he? See, I'm kind of pumped for Rage 2, but how Bethesda's been lately. I was at id during the whole Bethesda merger. Like I remember going into the room with Carmack and all them, and they're like, "This is a thing. This is what's going on." Blah blah blah. And it's like the company just did a complete 180 and just completely different direction. Um, and by that I mean it had a very specific way of operating. It's just from being id, and went to a much more ZeniMax corporate kind of a kind of a environment with healthcare and just everything. Just PTO and days off and just how they manage things because it's ZeniMax. ZeniMax is the umbrella corporation that has Bethesda and id and all the Arcane and I think Battlecry and all that. In fact, if you go down the street 183 from in Austin, 183 in Mopac, there's a big building that says ZeniMax right up there. If you that building has Arcane and Battlecry in it. So yeah, Duke Nukem. Did a lot of Duke Nukem animations. I did do Duke Nukem. Well, I didn't do him. I animated him, and I let him do everyone. That's a that's a Duke joke. Oh, so on Duke Nukem, we're talking about games and uh, kind of funny things, right? So on Duke, there are technical requirements like we had a bounding box, like Duke was in a bounding box, right? Which is a like a cube that fits around. For those of you who don't know what a bounding box is, it's just something you're kind of like. In this case, it was something that he had to fit in, right? He had to be inside this bounding box in order to be able to, which was a metric. I've talked about metrics earlier tonight, and in order to fit through doors, or if you crouch down, there's a smaller bounding box to be able to fit through vents, and so on and so forth. Um, and because Duke was all camera and head, it's kind of like how we're working on Star Citizen. It's all camera and head. It's what you animate with the body you see, first person and third person. So we had to stay within this bounding box. So things like the gun, instead of like shotgun, where you think he'd be out here going, you know, shooting, we actually had to take that shotgun and go. So if you ever look at the game animation, like in multiplayer, he's back like this, because we had to keep him with that bounding box. So the joke was it's Duke in a box. So that was our joke. You're not the only person, TG, who loved Duke Nukem. A lot of people, believe it or not, love Duke Nukem. Well, I think a lot of people, I think he just didn't live up to the hype. He just wasn't delivered on time, and he wasn't delivered by the original guys who was working on it. So it didn't really have that original driving force of 3D Realms. Yeah, Gravity. So Gravity. Yeah. Yeah. One of the biggest issues I've seen from people new to animation is that they create character animation too smoothly without considering the snap movements of muscles. What are your thoughts about that? Yes, it's kind of getting back into the timing of things. Timing and arcs and curves, overlap, follow through, very important. Um, People do animate. Uh, Things feel very slow and sluggish sometimes, and it's okay to like, you're gonna throw a ball to like this is frame one, and then that's frame two. You don't have to like put all those keyframes in so you can see this nice slow, unless you're animating slow motion, right? But you really want that to like whip around and like snap within a frame or two. Uh, Cocking a gun and firing the gun is a great example because you pull the slide back, right? And when you fire like an automatic, when you animate that slide has to like blow back, which cocks the hammer and snaps in, right? It's okay, dogs, don't bark. Um, so you can't be like, oh, look how awesome this slide is going back and coming in and cocking the hammer. You have to do it like one frame. Sometimes it's really difficult 'cause things like that are so fast, that are faster than the human eye, would be faster than what cameras would typically pick up. So sometimes we don't even animate it going back. We'll actually start the slide back at the beginning of the animation and it just snaps forward, and it gives the illusion of blowback. So I don't know, helps. What is different about the process when working on animation for Star Citizen versus other games? and there are different parameters for what's considered good, or is it just like animating for any other game? Well, I don't want to talk too much about Star Citizen, but I will say Chris Roberts has very high expectations and very high standards for his game, and he's constantly trying to push the envelope, which is why when you see what we release, in fact, you should go to the Star Citizen website, Robert Space Industries, or go to YouTube and watch Around the Verse or any of those others. Watch the mission givers. We've spent a lot of time and energy on the mission givers, and they look amazing because we're doing full performance capture and we're really working hard to put that quality in there. Um, I would say the process. The process is, in some aspects, it's exactly the same. The process for our game versus other games. You gather your reference material. Let's say you got to do a jump. I got to jump off a table and onto the floor. That's my animation I was assigned. I gather my reference. Look up YouTube videos of guys jumping off of tables, backyard wrestling, and or film yourself jumping off the table or whatever, because you need that reference, or you go and you shoot motion capture for the guy jumping off, and you figure out how they're going to jump off, technically how it needs to be hooked up in game, all the different technical aspects to make things work, and they jump off. So you gather your reference material, and then you go and you animate, just like anywhere else. Um, where we kind of differ is this. A lot of times in game, we also have a cinematic approach, like I was saying with our mission givers and shopkeepers, and a lot of the other little vignette stuff. Is we try to craft those the way that you would craft a cinematic. We don't spend as much time on them as the cinematics team spends on their stuff, because the cinematics may have like these amazing uh, movies that you're going to see during the game, but they're working on this much, right? Even though they're huge scenes with lots of characters, they're working on this much. While the game content for the game that we're working on, like we're working on that much. There's so many animations, 200 per character sometimes, or more. So sometimes you have to work smart instead of hard. Let's see. Oh, I can't really comment much on EVA stuff or waitlists or that kind of stuff. That's all in the works. Yep, Hellcat 5 Gaming. This whole guy's got to stick together. See, a I thought I was a animator channel. Let's see, I have socks older than that. I have underwear you can see through. see, see, what did I animate on Duke? Before I left 3D Realms, and I helped Triptych out a little bit. I did pretty much every Duke weapon set. I had the shotgun, animating the shotgun, putting the shells in. At the time I was really proud of that. So George Broussard, who is like the director on the project, game developer, designer, he for Duke 3D went to a gun show and 3D Realms bought a shotgun, and in Duke 3D they took pictures of it, you know, and digitized it and put it into Duke 3D. Well, that shotgun happened to just be sitting in a closet at 3D Realms. And I'm sitting there like I'm trying to figure out the shotgun animation. I mean, I've never at that point in my life I never handled a shotgun. And George is like, you gotta this and that. I really want this, and I'm gonna see the thing that come, shells put in. And I'm like, man, I need something. He's like, you want the shotgun? I'm like, what? He's like, hold on, I'll go get it for you. And he like takes off and he goes to the closet where it's been sitting for like 12 years or whatever. He like grabs it and he brings it back and he's like, here you go. And so I had on my desk the original shotgun used for Duke 3D. I'm like playing with it. It doesn't have a stock on it. It's just got the grip and the grip on the slide or whatever that's called. So I was like playing with it. I was like figuring out how to like get shells in. So I spent a long time on that. Well, relatively speaking, you know, a decent amount of time figuring out how to get those shells into the shotgun. He also had brought his I want to say it's a 1911 uh, automatic pistol, which is what Duke uses in the game. He brought that in unloaded. Don't worry, it's Texas here where we're all safe when it comes to guns. We know how to handle them. But brings in his pistol, and I sitting there and I'm like playing with it. It's unloaded. By playing, I mean I'm like watching how it articulates, and I'm looking at how like the slide comes back, and how it pulls back the hammer, and how clips, how you eject the, or not the clips, I'm sorry, eject the magazines, pull the magazine out, put it back in. A lot. Discovered you can't twirl an automatic the way you can twirl a revolver, even though Duke twirls. I believe they're Desert Eagles that he has in game. Now that I think about it, he twirls his guns. You can't twirl those very easily. Um, but anyways, yeah, Pig Cops. If you go to my website, brewhouseartstudio.com, I have my Duke Nukem reel that I put out whenever 3D Realm shut down, and it was stolen off my website. By stolen, I mean I had it hidden on my website. I could give you a link, like as I was looking for jobs, and some people went on and Google hacked my website and stole my demo reel and put it out there for the world to see. And it got something like I can't remember if it was game. I think it was Game Trailers was the website. On Game Trailers alone, it got 2.5 million views before I stopped looking. Just, I was like, I was counting. I was like 100,000, 500,000, a million. Just like, it's like every day I'd go back and it'd be like, 10,000 more views. And, it, that was not only it was like the worst time in my life. I felt like I was so worried. I mean, game industries are so secretive, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so screwed. 3D Realms could sue me, and I was just thinking about all these like horrible things that could happen. It happened on a Friday when my demo reel was stolen, and I'm just like, oh man, if I my anxiety was so bad it felt like somebody was stabbing me in the back of the head with a knife. I couldn't think. I couldn't function. And I went into work Monday and I walked up to George Broussard. I was like, George, uh, my my demo reel got uh, my website got hacked and my reel got stolen and posted everywhere. And I really did. I tried. I flagged it on YouTube. It's got nudity. It's got boobies in it. Ban it. And YouTube would ban it right away. But then people got clever and put like little pasties to hide it so they can keep it up. And I was trying to flag it. It's not your property, blah, blah, blah. Some people were really nice. I was like, hey, can you please take that down? They took it down. Some people didn't care. They just put it up other places. The kicker is all my contact information was on there. So I started getting phone calls from people randomly like, is this Brian? I'm like, yeah. Dude, you gotta finish the game, blah blah blah. People asking me, calling me, and asking me for builds of the game, and so I'm like, I don't have builds of the game. But yeah, I went into George. I was like, sorry, George, this is a thing. This is what happened. And George was like, he was devastated. He was like, he did not want to have to close the doors and stop development. He wanted to finish Duke, um, and he was like, it is what it is, man. It's okay. And luckily, my demo reel leaking was not the first thing that leaked. My animation, or not animation director, my art lead, Trammell, he have posted a bunch of stuff on his bike because that's what we're doing, right? We lost our jobs. We're posting our stuff online because we got to get jobs. And that people latched onto these things that had never been seen from Duke Nukem Forever, and we're fucking posting them. Sorry, cussed. This is a PG. This is a PG channel or G channel, but people are like posting them everywhere. Just and uh, and in fact, one guy who's a designer, I forget who it was. He created a zip file of all of his design docs, and he sent those 5 zipped files out to 5 different companies looking for work. These are legitimate companies. One of them posted all the design docs. Somebody from one of those companies got a hold of it and posted all those design docs online. Holy smokes, that is the most unprofessional thing among the most unprofessional things I've heard about in the game industry. Uh, that guy, you're working at a company, a guy's trying to get a job, he gave you something in confidence on a locked zip file, and you go and post it. I was like, man, too bad you didn't have a watermark on that, or you'd have been able to like figure out which company did it because you could find the watermark. So, so I mean, mine wasn't the only thing that got leaked out at that time. My website, my old website, had in like one day 54,000 views. I I was like lucky to get like one view a day or one view a week or one view a month because it's not like I put myself out there, especially at that time. To jump from like almost nothing to like tens of thousands of views and people like spamming my mailbox with requests to get my demo reel, and then finally saying, "Sorry, never mind, somebody else has got it." You know, like, yeah. But I think the most satisfying thing, I mean, at the time, man, it was devastating. That was the worst, one of the worst weekends of my life. But in retrospect, after I came back, the Monday after, I talked to one of the designers. I think it was Pete Kemplay, who's now over at Epic, if I remember correctly. I want to say it was him. He's like, yeah, I saw your demo reel leak online because we're all over media, social media, trying to like Facebook and everything, just trying to, it's what happens when you get laid off. And he said he saw it and he watched it like 4 or 5 times, and he went to bed, and then he got up and he watched it again, and he loved it. And I think that was probably one of the most satisfying things, is knowing that when I created that demo reel, it started off with like, here's stuff I did at Terminal Reality and Ghostbusters. Here's the stuff that I working on Duke Nukem. I was still pretty new in the industry at that time, so I didn't really have a huge portfolio to show. But it kind of like my demo reel slowly morphed into a like basically homage to Duke Nukem and the game that I worked on for 3 years, and we're in, you know, we're so close to shipping at that time, that it really meant, believe it or not, a lot to a lot of the guys I worked at, because they were able to watch it. Yeah, it was my animation, but it was Mark Skelton's models and Chris Smith's vehicles, and Scott McLean's levels, and I mean in level design. And it's like everybody could see their work in my demo reel, and everybody that I worked with really really loved it and appreciated it. And I love all you guys' questions, and I really want to answer as many as I can. I don't know if I can get to all of them tonight. Uh, let's see. See if I can answer maybe a couple more questions before it's time for me to sign off. All right. So some of these are like YouTube links I'm gonna have to click on later and view. In fact, I will see if one can I click on that. Erg. Does anybody know if I can get to these questions later? Hey, so in my Twitch account, if you like scroll down, there's like a little thing where you can like fill stuff out, like questions and stuff. So feel free to load that up with stuff, and I'll see if I can get to it over the week. And I plan on trying to stream Wednesdays, and I'm gonna try for Sunday evenings about the same time, about 8:30 ish, give or take. Um, and try to have something fresh and new, or sculpt like some of the stuff that I've been sculpting, just kind of like, I could talk about game industry stuff or whatever while I'm working. But let's see. Pig cop was so sexy. Let me tell you about the pig cop, ladies and gentlemen. We had a joke at 3D Realms. We called it cross clavicle technology. So prior to me showing up, there used to be a whole bunch of other animators there working on Duke. And Trammell came in and slowly pruned people who didn't really fit the bill. And some guys left on their own accord because they're like, I don't like the changes in the company, and went on to do really good things. But they were all very new in the industry when they got that job. So somebody, who shall remain nameless because I found out who it was later, decided to put the clavicle joint, which is usually, right about here-ish, cross them. And so what happened is when you take the pig cop and you'd rotate his shoulder out, his shoulder would like swing way out like this. And like, we would look at it and go, what the heck's going on here? What's up with the shoulder? Why are the clavicles crossed? Did somebody accidentally reparent the joints? I'm like looking at the names. I'm like, oh no, no. The left was on the right side and the right was on the left side, and they were crossed. And we did a job of retargeting, which we talked about earlier, right? We fixed the skeleton, we took all the old animation, we retargeted it onto the new character, and then we started updating with stuff. Um, so yeah, we retargeted tons of stuff in Duke. Could only have done it through Motionbuilder, by the way. Um, but yeah, cross clavicles. The pig cops had these weird cross clavicles. In fact, several of the characters had weird cross clavicles. They eventually got fixed, most of them. But I think the pig cops stayed legacy, and they stayed cross. So cross clavicle technology. And I'm a big RoboCop fan, so I made an OCP logo that was like, instead of said OCP, it was like cross clavicle CCT, cross clavicle technology, in that same style. And we put that poster up everywhere in the office. And I was trying to get it somewhere in the game as a inside Easter egg joke. Uh, but yeah, if you ever play the game and you go into the first level, you start in that stadium and you're like peeing in the urinal, and then you leave and you're like, you have all the lockers, all the names above the lockers of the game developers, and I'm in there somewhere. My name's right there. So, anywho, uh, oh, I'm sure Smart Skeleton is doing great. He's from what I understand, he's I want to say Blue Point. Is he at Blue Point? I think he's at Blue Point now. I worked with that guy at 3D Realms, and then we both went to Lightbox, and I worked with him. So 3 years at 3D Realms, at Lightbox 3 years, and then went to then we both ended up at Cloud Imperium Games uh, before he eventually left. So I worked with that guy a long time. I mean, that doesn't happen all that often. Usually, you work with a lot of people, but very rarely do you work at three different studios with the same person. The game industry is so small. Everybody's connected by like one person, like the 1 degree of bacon in the game industry. If you work at a studio, chances are I at least know somebody who also works at that studio, or somebody who knows somebody who works at that studio, or you know, and So you got to be careful in the game industry because you can get yourself blackballed. I've seen it happen before where guys are like, cause a problem, they try to go, they leave or get fired, and they try to go get another job. And what happens? Hey, so and so used to work at this place. Didn't you used to work there? And you're like, yeah. Hold on, let me check. And so they get their contacts. Hey, I heard so and so's working. How what? Tell me what the deal is. What's the deal? And they go, oh, that person. Oh, you don't want to work with him. They cause problems and stuff like that, and they're bad attitude and stuff. And yeah, you can get blackballed. In fact, I know one guy who has changed his name and keeps getting himself fired. Literally changed his last name. Still keeps getting himself fired from studios. I don't even know where he's at now. So if you're gonna work in the game industry, friendly, play nice, get along, and you'll do really well. Don't, and people are gonna be like, you're gonna become hard. It's gonna be hard to get a job. Definitely is. Let's see. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this little talk, and I hope to see you guys again later. This is me signing off because it's like after midnight my time, and I need to get to bed so I can go work on some more Star Citizen stuff for you guys. I got a lot of work to do, a little bit of time to do it in. And, I've got some stuff. I got some fun stuff planned for motion capture and animation. I'm learning OBS, which is what I'm using to stream. I'm going to have a better camera. It's coming tomorrow. I promise. It's not going to be this horrible camera that I'm using now. Uh, and I think you guys might like it. I hope you guys like it. Tell your friends. Let people know that this is a thing and that they can come watch. And right now everything's free because I don't know how to get paid for it yet. so so watch while it's still available and free. Yes, Mark. I do like Mark. Mark's a good guy. By the way, I worked with Mark for a long time. I mentioned that. I actually I've worked with somebody longer than I've worked with Mark through across multiple studios, and I'm still working with that guy today. His name's Chris Smith. He worked on Duke Nukem Forever. He worked at Lightbox, and he's worked on Star Citizen. In fact, I used to be married, and then I ended up getting divorced after 9 years of marriage because it's the game industry. That just happens. Sucks, but it's a thing. I worked with him longer than I was married. I worked with that guy forever. I worked at I've been with Cloud Imperium for since 2013, January 2nd of 2013 to today, right? Officially, as in studio working. Worked with Chris that whole time, and then the 3 years at Lightbox and like the 3 years at 3D Realms. So I worked with that guy a long time. He's super talented, super good guy. But anyways, uh, this is me signing off. I promise next one will go smoother and things will be better. So I want you all to have a good night and catch you next time.
All right.